AI coding tool. And about 2 weeks later, I hear about a new bug in the new AI coding tool. I want to talk today about a wonderful thing that's found in the Gemini CLI. So the Gemini CLI is Google CLI for the Gemini model. Before we get into this, I want to talk about kind of AI coding in general. I think there's a lot of discourse online about whether or not AI coding is good or bad. And as someone who's a security engineer and offensive security researcher, I have some personal takes on it. It's probably pretty much just in the video. I think overall, AI code generation is actually an okay thing if executed correctly. Okay, AI code generation allows you to move quickly. However, it does not mean that you should move quickly. Every piece of code is tech debt. And all because you can create code faster now does not mean that code is also not tech debt. You can use AI, in my opinion, to write some really cool systems really, really fast, but you need to be constantly evaluating the code that they are tons of and the cursor or text editor, which basically the SMO part of the cursor AI underneath it. And you have the CLI tools, right? Where instead of opening up VS Code and spawning through the application, you can use the CLI tool, or you can use applications right in the browser. And Gemini CLI is one of them. Now, the way that a lot of these CLIs work is you have to specify these things called context files, typically the readme.md and gemini.md, right? So these are typically referred to as like rules files in text editors for AI. Basically, what's happening here is there needs to be some place for the AI to look, to read, and get a general context of what's happening in the code base. Like the readme might say, this is an HTTP server written in C, and it uses this, this person pattern. And then the Gemini MD file might say, okay, cool. Also, this is how I think Gemini should behave in this project, or you use these roles to do these. Now, unfortunately, there has been a code execution vulnerability in Gemini CLI, and if you're probably guessing what's going already, it's command injection, right? And while we can't stop to happening, one of the best ways to stay ahead of hackers is today's video sponsor, Flare. Flare is a threat exposure platform that can tell you if you or your company's data has been compromised in cybercrime. Here, I put some of my personal identifiers, like my email addresses and my site, the local academy, as identifiers in the Flare system. And identifiers can be a variety of things, like domain names, keyword, fake API keys, breadcrumbs, sometimes for hackers to get tripwired on, or usernames and passwords. If Flare detects those have been picked up either on the dark web or elsewhere, I can get events sent to me. And here you can see all the events that Flare has found without me doing any work just on those identifiers. Also has a really cool intel feed that I like, where things are happening all over the world, all the time in cyberspace. And we have one article here that says that a threat actor claims to sell a custom ransomware as a service targeting Windows and ESXi, the virtualization platform. What this means is that if you are a person that actively uses ESXi in the cloud environment and you feel like things are getting weird in the network, you have a place to go look and see, hey, maybe weird. You can use my link right here to get a free trial of Flare while supplies last. Hey, Flare, thanks for sponsoring the video. The attack is very straightforward. Basically, all you have to do is put a command inside of your Gemini.md file, and then at the end of the command, put another command that's malicious. That's like hacking 101, right? If I can get the user to execute a command, maybe we can do evil shit, right? And so what's happening here in this example command, the malicious command, in the Gemini.md file, what they're doing is saying, hey, rep the readme.md file for install, right? Very simple, benign command. But then semicolon, they create a new command, and they say, oh, also take the local environment, which will have your API keys, your database, your name and password, all of your sensitive information for your server, which ideally isn't in your dev environment. That's a whole other, environment. Take the environment and then use curl, the command toast request, and send it out to .server on port 8080, right? So what we're doing here is basically saying, like, hey, Gemini, when you turn on, I need you to run this command to boot up, and this command will exfiltrate the API. Here is that, like, there are different white space patterns where Gemini will or will not invalidate things, and the fact that, like, this, like, just putting a semicolon at the end of it is, like, allowed is kind of crazy by default. We will see that, if this were to happen, if you ran this in Gemini, it would show the user like, hey, we're about to run rep install readme env pipe to curl. Like, it would show them the entire malicious command. Oh man, plan's foiled. Now the user's going to see what we're doing. Unless, of course, we inserted some top secret white space technique developed by, some crazy. No, literally, it's just press enter a few times, and then it hides it. So what you'll see here is Gemini CLI is running the command and saying rep install readme3, which is the front end of that malicious command. Oh, and just pipe that into head because head gets the top n number of lines of standard output. I only want to see the top 3 lines, and then enter, semicolon, the command, right? So it's like, okay. Now, when this was sent to Google, right, this vulnerability was sent to Google, they did fix it. They did the right thing, and they, responsible disclosure had a full turnaround from vulnerability disclosure to agreed disclosure date and release on the 25th. Like, pretty much a month of time went by. And, some of the notes we got back from the team were the CLI is centered on providing robust, multi-layered sandboxing, which basically means that the Google team is telling them, hey, like, we see here that you're running Google CLI in no sandbox mode. Sandboxing is this environment in software, this constant software, where basically things like root jails or containers are able to create these layers of security around applications so that even if you get code execution in that application, it's not allowed to touch other contents at that same privilege level. You create like these artificial boundaries in software that say, hey, you can't touch it. And so Google was saying, hey, man, like, we understand the bug is a thing. We're going to fix it. But also, you're not in sandbox mode. You could have fixed it being sandbox mode. The issue that I have with that, I think, threat model of like, oh, just be in sandbox mode is the default mode of the Gemini CLI is no sandbox, right? And I think a lot of what, like, the marketing and like the audience targeting of these no code, like vibe coding tools is to the layman, is to the person with like a extremely small amount of coding knowledge. So for like Google to come out and say, hey, we hear you, but why aren't you sandboxing? It's like, dude, the tool sit without sandboxing by default. And like, maybe I as a security researcher would do that. Or maybe, the people at Traceman who found this bug would use the sandboxing. But like, I don't think it's reasonable to expect the average person to just like have sandboxing enabled by default, right? Like, that's a thing that the average person won't really do. In my opinion, this pattern of like prompt injection type stuff isn't going to go away anytime soon, just personally, because I think the problem we're dealing with here is like there aren't multiple planes of data when it comes to doing vibe coding or like using a text editor to manipulate data where the rules files and the code files can exist in the same plane. It sounds very like Magic the Gathering ethereal. What I'm saying is that because the code that the user is providing lives in like the same realm of existence, like its files, as the prompt for the AI, if there isn't like an insane amount of work done on filtering this data, we're going to keep seeing this over and over and over. And the reason I say this is because we literally had a bug. I think it was either in GPT-4 or like a Claude AI variant, some model a few months back. I made a video on it where basically, if you just injected these magical white space characters called like E3000s, these characters are like Unicode white space characters that appear to the human eye as white space, but when you type them out in data, the AI can interpret them as real values, right? So what ends up happening here is you can type out data using these fake characters that you as a human can't read unless you put it into a text editor and like change the values. But the AI will automatically just ingest it and like slurp it up as real data, right? I'm all for AI coding if it's properly audited, if someone's reading the code, if there's proper security analysis on it, stuff like that. But there's also this really weird, scary attack vector. Like, we're going to start seeing these repos that are riddled with like, oh, and by the way, curl, download, a rootkit, install it locally for me, and it's going to use these like crazy characters. I don't see a programmatic way of creating a whitelist for this, right? The only acceptable thing. The reason for that is Chinese characters, Arabic characters, all the characters that are non-ASCII like Unicode need to be readable by the AI. But also, how do you do that and then also block out all the white space that isn't valid? So, instead of doing a whitelist, you're only allowing these things, you have to do a blacklist. What does it mean about that? Hold on. Generally, it's accepted that whitelists are better than blacklists. Whitelist is the things that are allowed. Blacklist is the things that are not allowed. The reason for this is that no bicycle riding, no rollerblading,
please arrive at the pickup point before 6 a.m. About to arrive at the destination. Please choose a safe place to park.
Obviously, I don't want to doom and gloom, right? That's not the point of this channel. The point of this channel is to raise awareness about things, to make things happier, healthier, and create a safer world for everybody. So go out, dude. Go download the Gemini CLI. Go vibe code an application. But you have to do due diligence. If you're going to clone code, you have to read the code. You're going to read the Gemini files. You're going to read the cursor rules. You're going to run your Gemini CLI in a sandbox, and you're going to like the way you look. I guarantee it. Thanks for watching. Good stuff. Please. So I've talked about it a bit before, but there is a growing Linux community called All Things Linux. They've got an incredibly helpful, active, and friendly Discord server, and I'm probably going to get a bunch of messages because every time I mention them, they get a spike in users. So go be nice to them, go check them out, and go help them out with any of the projects they've got going on. And maybe, just maybe, don't do the thing that the person we're talking about today did. Use this as a counterexample on how you should go about reporting a vulnerability. So the link has been here for a while, but very recently, and unlike the art these other distro wikis where they are very much focused on that distro, you can use that information in other distros, but it's always going to be flavored towards that specific environment. The ACL wiki is intending to be this general Linux wiki that everybody can contribute to. Every distro is welcome. It's going to have information about DEs to distros, Linux mascots to package managers, and basically everything else in between. It's still very early on. It's a very lofty goal, but I wish them the best of luck because when this is in a good state, this is going to be an incredibly useful resource. Now, when Clayson and the rest of the team first announced this, they didn't have everyone being over on Discord. It's surprising. Absolutely no one ever. It crashed the server. This was about 3 minutes after the announcement was made. So initially it wasn't on the best of equipment. It was pretty minimal because there just wasn't any expectation that it was going to be this popular, this and I don't know why that wasn't the thought. There is a lot of people on the Discord server. They are very passionate about what the project is doing. And even if over time it slows down and goes to a normal pace, that initial burst is going to be pretty big. Now, luckily, the main site and the wiki, those are on separate servers. So when this site went down, the main site was still up. Also, the database for the wiki is on its own separate server as well. So even though there was a server crash, there was no risk of any data loss because of that happened. So this was entirely expected, no issue at the time. And hopefully after that, things went into a more normal level of usage. Well, that's not exactly what happened. Eventually, this post was made by someone known as Rose or Fakelix. Please fix your DDoS protection. Why did it do that? Please fix your DDoS protection, showing a picture of the site being broken, and then SSL handshake failing. So, browser was fine, Cloudflare was fine, but the wiki itself was entirely broken. The one being very confusing, servers online, I don't think broken. What's this? It's mitigated now. Slightly mitigated 100 gigs. And then moving it over to the ACL wiki place because this is just random discussion thread. It was eventually going to get lost. It is with the start saying down again, showing a picture of the site being broken. Now the back end is exposed. Anyway, this is not like a private channel though, so access. This is not a place where you need to be a mod or you need to be like a special thing. Nothing like that. This is a deeply public discussion channel. And you're not a single is still exposed, again pointing to the IP address. Okay, so you have the IP address. Rather
repeating this. Can you explain how it can be fixed? Because I have no idea what you mean. It can't be. Your IP was already scraped into census. Only way of fixing it is when you get a new IP, gotta contact yours hosting. During this period, the server went down and down and down and down. Every single time it came back online, immediately shut down, immediately dead. This is census, the authority for internet intelligence and insights. The important part is the census search, the census database. Basically, if you put this IP address in, it's being removed now because the server's moved to a different IP, so there's no point keeping it in the database. But this is basically a database of what every public IP address that's moved about that's been approved actually points to. And in this case, it was pointing to the ATM. As you can see, earlier, like yesterday, this showed all the information about the ATM. This movement of the address is the same. It's like a ways to get out. Saying, just pause, finally clicking what was actually happening. That this person here, they were just trying to during this period. They were the reason the server kept going down. They were DDoSing the server over and over again, just expecting that someone is going to magically fix it, not knowing why the DDoS is happening. Then trying to act all cutesy about it. Yeah, smiley face, you just admitted to an actual crime. Malware and zero-day author over here. In all due respect, F you. You didn't need to be an ass and effing DDoS us to notify us of a problem. But for real, get over the HR pass server, much better back there, and like also nobody mitigation system. Double up this thing, bang, this is not the approach you take when you want to inform someone that there is some sort of vulnerability, some sort of issue that needs to be resolved. You don't come and constantly DDoS the server, waiting until they fix it, not to have the problem is. And keep on, this is not some like vulnerability reported 6 months ago, 12 months ago, anything like that. The server went online the day after this person found that they could do this, and then just kept doing it until it was resolved. Like, there was no grace period, nothing. Just out of nowhere, attacking the server. Based on database here, and there was an actual problem here. So here's basically what happened. The intention from the start was to put the wiki behind a Cloudflare proxy rather than have the users connect directly to the server. This is so the traffic is routed to Cloudflare, not exposing the IP of the server directly. So if you want to do things like DDoS protection, like AI screen protection, things like that, that can be hit by Cloudflare. A lot of platforms do this. Yeah, not Cloudflare. A lot of platforms use various other tools to display traffic. And one of the things Cloudflare directly advertises is DDoS protection. They use an under-attack online, which is probably here to sell you various things, but even so, it is something that Cloudflare is used. It is one of the main functions that we use Cloudflare. And then for ATM developers who want to access a server, they do so through Cloudflare Access, and basically random trying to log into the server, that's going to be automatically blocked, and random people don't have access to log in through Cloudflare. So that part isn't a problem whatsoever, and that part is not the thing that we're focusing on. But if finding Cloudflare proxy, why did Cloudflare do its job in mitigating bot traffic? Here's the problem. It was set up, it was live, accessible on that server, but Cloudflare proxy will not involve with fixing it. So instead of going through Cloudflare and this happens with every server out there. Immediately, the IP is scraped, and everything about what that server is hosting is put into databases like that census. So there's no way to hide a public IP address. You need to know the IP address to connect to the server. But what you can do is obfuscate how you identify that IP address. And that's directly to that server, connect to the cloud player, and then the cloud player is connected to the server. So cloud player knows what that server is pointing to. Random users, they just see a cloud player IP. But if at any point you are hosting the server without cloud player in the mix with something else on the client, that IP of the server is directly used by the users. And at this point, it is basically burnt, and you'll always be able to send hot traffic directly to that server, completely circumventing Cloudflare. Basically, the what is rolling a new IP address or rolling a new server. And that's pretty much what was done. That's why in the census database, it no longer has the information about the ATL wiki, because the ATL wiki is no longer at that address. Now, this is legitimate problem, and this was a problem that needed to be solved, because if not this person, somebody else was going to DDoS the server and then have absolutely no idea why Cloudflare is meant to be the issue is how this person went to do it. Firstly, doing a test case to verify that something works, but constantly running the attack. It is totally fine, totally need to find the hacking. Do an exploit once to verify the exploit actually functions. You kind of need to do that, otherwise you're just reporting nonsense. But once is enough. You don't need to keep running the exploit until somebody responds to you and somebody goes and fixes it. That is way outside the line. Secondly, immediately going public, not trying to reach out privately in any way. ATL has if you want to reach out to the pods, if you want to reach out to Kaizen or anybody else in the team and say, hey, here is this problem, here is how you exploit it, maybe even here's what you can do to fix it, that would be totally above board. But if what you're doing is telling everybody the problem exists, risking more people trying to exploit the problem, and then constantly using the exploit, you're not helping anyone with it. All you are doing is basically being a script kiddie that wants to ruin people's day. And a bit of a side tangent about them being a script kiddie, because they claim to be a lot more than that. I don't know. One of the ones reached out to them, and they just started talking about crime. They started just talking about other experts they have and how they have the model. They claim to have some crazy zero-day exploit for TP-Link routers, but there's 150,000 devices that they know about, and they claim to be writing some new variant of this exploit, and it's posted the exploit in Discord. Like, what are you doing? I obviously cannot show it, I cannot post it here, but just believe me, this person is either a lead super hacker or an actual moron. There is nothing wrong with activism, with white hat hacking, but when you're going and exploiting a problem, not just to show that it exists, but to ruin people's day, you very quickly go from the white hat territory into the black hat territory, and basically just doing cybercrime because, I don't know.
New message from Jess. Elevator coming down now.
So, I'm someone who is maybe found a community and tried to work Also, are you over 18 already? If not, go check out. I'll leave that link in the description down below. Go give them a join. Go show them some love. So, if you like the video, you're subscribed, well, and if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out Patreon, subscribe, down the very link in the description down below.
There's a lot of turmoil happening in the customer community, particularly among the privacy and security focused custom ROM. A month ago, I announced in a video that Google made a decision to eliminate providing access to the full source code of a Google Pixel, which normally includes not just the Android open source project or AOSP, but also the full Linux distribution on the phone that includes all the device drivers. This level of access was typically referred to as including the device tree. Well, that turmoil is more apparent now, and in the open, as just a month later, we now hear that Calyx OS is pausing operation and even telling people to go ahead and install alternative OSs on their phone. The original founder has left the project, and the lead developer has also moved on to other projects. By all external appearances, the Calyx Institute is organizing, and they claim that it will be a 6-month hiatus. Well, some, of course, will start looking for alternatives and focus on Graphene OS, for example. That OS has the same exact difficulties as Google blocking access to the device through source code for the Pixel. And something not so obvious is that there will be no way to put these operating systems into new Pixels that will be released in the fall, at least using the old method. Even before all this, the Google OS Divest OS also shut down, so it doesn't seem to be a good year for privacy and security focused Android custom ROM. I'm sure many of you wonder what the effect of all this is on the long-term options for privacy phones, and maybe we can discuss some other future headwinds by understanding future changes that may supply further bad news. So I want to assess all these goings on for you and give you guidance with future choices, as well as know how to deal with situations where you find that your OS is no longer supported. Is this cause for panic, especially for those of you using Calyx OS? What should you do if you're using this OS? And what are the future choices? Let's try and figure this out. Stay right there. I really like Calyx OS. In fact, I used it on my Pixel phone for a long time, and I thought it was
New message from Jess. Where are you?
a very good option for privacy. I've recommended Calyx OS to many of my followers, but for some unknown reason, the founder of Calyx OS didn't seem to be interested in making a connection and just didn't respond to me. Well, in spite of that, I'm saddened by the state of affairs in the Android system ROM community. There's just this Graphene OS group that's wasting energy focusing on attacking others instead of building a collaboration that will bring more people in. The Calyx OS community seems like a good normal crowd, so it is not a good feeling to see them struggle and hopefully not follow in the footsteps of Divest OS. So what I push here on this channel, which is internet privacy projects like Calyx OS, definitely fulfills the need of the privacy community. But this does not signal the other privacy-based operating system, and many are not affected. So there's no immediate need to panic. Later on, I will give you my opinion. Or overreact. But let's start the story with the current concern, and that is Google blocking access to the Google Pixel source code. This is one that has led to the most bad press and has made people worry about their phones. The Pixel problem. The privacy and security community is small to begin with, but instead of working together, communities are fighting each other, pushing claims they're better. And the result is just confusion. This negative material is fodder for the AI from Reddit. And it is very positive for this community. It's sad, but that's the way it is. The reason for this exclusivity is not the Graphene OS founders themselves, but telling the world that Graphene OS is better. No other more concerning analysis would never be its true answer. Better for what? In order to sound really unique, most Graphene OS and Calyx push the concept of fixed problems. In other words, it's better because it's pixel. Now, I don't know why anyone in privacy with most of their lives. That's who we are. And then again, I've always looked at graphene as disconnected from the privacy threat and more focused on particular security threats. Because the Graphene OS founder had a particular penchant for low-level C programming, he started focusing on fairly obscure threats on the phone and really went beyond. This guy modified the source code to Linux function. Though one wonders why such changes haven't been pushed to mainline Linux if they're so critical. Did Linux do in any case, of cybersecurity people? But interestingly enough, these changes to graphene were so specialized that really no one copied it, for example, Calyx OS, which had access to the same source code. So Calyx OS is pretty much a plain vanilla Linux provided by Google, together with their modifications to the Android framework itself. That's fine, as I will explain again in a future video, the real privacy benefit of a Google phone is that it is a no identity phone. This is really enough to get push for my community. The real unique offering, though, of the Google Pixel-based custom ROM, which Calyx OS was able to claim, was the feature called Secure Boot. Lineage OS cannot do Secure Boot. EOD OS on Lineage OS cannot do Secure Boot. So yes, this one. By the way, this is actually not something building of graphene. The Brax 3 using EOD OS and later Brax 3 as Secure Boot. This is completely dependent on the project having access to the entire source code. That's really it. Limitations of Lineage OS. The main OS and the most popular that competes against the Graphene OS and Calyx OS solutions is Lineage OS. Lineage OS has been around a long time and was really the first custom ROM. The construction of the solution was a bit different. The OS maker, like the Calyx OS in the past, had access to the source code. All of it, Android portion, Linux, and the device. This is really not that different from, let's say, the Brax 3, which also has the entire source code available. We can compile the entire distribution from source. This means that any changes made at the level of Graphene OS could also be done on a Brax 3, just like the Pixel. But that's not the way Lineage OS is constructed. Instead, the Lineage OS approach is to take the original files from the original OEM, whether it be and basically recreate the original image from a production model. And then Lineage OS replaces the Android framework version with its own system image. And this allows them to change the Android user interface while ensuring that everything else on the phone works forward. And this is fine since the Google spyware is actually in the Android framework. And it will work as before since the Linux and device are original. Should not be compiled, it was just copied. Because the entire distribution is not built together from scratch and it is instead a modified image, the bootloader will sound an alarm that the modules are not original and display a secure boot error or warning. This is something we are all familiar with when installing custom ROMs, and of course, we just ignore that since we know it is the reality on Lineage OS. Now, because the source code for the Pixel is no longer available, and OS like Calyx OS can no longer provide this. Since it will be left with the same function as Lineage OS. So for the long run, it really wants we're using the same function as Lineage OS. That should work.
Morning.
There's nothing to suggest that Calyx OS will die even secure book. The problem, of course, is that the Graphene OS community is go on claiming that even if Calyx OS survives, that it is no longer going to feature secure boot. So I'm sure you'll never hear the end of the bad press on that. But what's funny is that I have no idea how Graphene OS will be able to do any new model Pixel with secure boot with the full source code. So it turns out that their main claim to uniqueness could now be their Achilles heel. For the short run, they're able to mix and match devices to ship older versions of Android and Windows with working with 16. But this is not a model solution. It's basically a generator to keep going, and it only works on existing Pixel models. And as I said, they will not that should be apparent when you Pixel drops later in the year, and then you will see what I mean. Now, as I already said, privacy has now who has joined the Braxton project. The Ubuntu Touch project is also on board. Well, if the newly constituted Calyx OS wishes to compile a version from Braxton 3 with secure, we can help with that, and we had already asked them months ago. At the time, they were interested. That's what the old leadership. To clarify, you can only do secure on phones you manufacture. So, you manufacture Braxton. Now, the question is secure in this future? The purpose of secure boot is for the phone to detect that the operating system is modified. Now, however, in the real world, whenever you update the OS on a phone, the data is erased. So there's actually no way to acquire the data on the phone by replacing the OS. From a privacy point of view, you will know someone altered your phone because all your data would be gone, which of course is a senseless kind of attack if someone were trying to take your data. This is why I never really focused on the fancy feature of secure boot, as I did not see it as a legitimate way to attack a phone. Do not attack a phone to destroy the OS, since it can obviously be reinstalled. You attack the phone to capture data. As I said, even without secure boot, you can't. Anyway, if Calyx OS continues on using the lineage OS approach without secure boot, I would push them and I think that everything has built something. Aside from being able to
Let me know if you found it okay. Black. It's like a light. Yeah. No, nothing. It's like no, like
made by
nothing. Have a look. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
I don't think a Pixel is superior. Despite claims of its superiority and security, I have actually issues with the privacy side. First, for any OS interested in privacy, clearly the Pixel has the device section, or specifically the files in system lib64, OEM lib64, and such areas on the phone that are actually filled with executables that have no source code. This means that no one, not even the Graphene OS guys, knows what's in the log. Practical private log source code. So one could claim that there's nothing unique about the Pixel. But yes, there is one unique thing about the Pixel. It is made by Google. So while other entities may not gain much from the surveillance of on the phone, this is Google we're talking about. This is their project of the Pixel Titan M chip. One of the biggest features claimed to be important to a lot of cybersecurity tech is the claim that the Pixel is unique because it has the Titan M security chip, which is equivalent to the Apple Secure Enclave. The security advantage of a separate security module is that the security keys used to encrypt the phone and its files are not stored in the main memory, but it's locked away in a dedicated chip. Thus, the understanding is that this hardens the phone against encryption attacks. But unlike people who do the theory analysis, the manufacturing phones, and apparently the Titan M chip is specifically a Google chip. You cannot install it on any other phone other than Google. Actually, the latest MediaTek flagship phone motherboard features a government certified security chip as well, so this should be common in a couple of years for the major OEM. However, the way the Titan M chip works, and even the Apple Secure Enclave, is that the security identity for the phone. The security key signatures are customized into each chip. So this means we will now possibly have a new IMEI-like identifier, but embedded in the security chip. And here's the other disturbing part. The Titan chip has to talk to Google, which has to validate signatures through Google. So now we've actually lost the privacy advantage with these security chips, starting with the Pixel 6, Pixel 7, and 8, specifically the Tensor model. So even when a privacy modification, the Titan chip itself will identify itself to Google separately and exchange keys. Thus, while perhaps adding to security, this is where it breaks from privacy. Phone hardening is a Quest project has been playing in objectives related phone hardening. And of course, Quest is based on the US do not have additional access to granted any hardening capabilities outside of what's provided by the OEM of the phone. But let's focus on the importance of phone hardening. While it's a lofty goal and maybe has little to do with the privacy issues that I discussed, it is still worthwhile to know. I recently made a video showing the possible hacks of the phone, which is very detailed. But if you look at the attack vectors, you will notice that none of the areas that are being attacked are segments being modified by granting OS. What is interesting is that the government appears to be able to break into any phone, like breaking Pegasus continues to get from one phone. The thing is that all these things are being all zero. In 0 day is an undiscovered form. So what hardening continues, so do the hacks so basically it appears to me that it's a losing battle to compete against intelligence agencies. It's cocky for able to claim they have some civilian agency. Thus, it is not a double approach for phone. None of the attacks I've documented really are at the level that's like SSM attacks in general. In fact, none of these are all updating on Galaxy. So it appears that those people with Galaxy I'm sure what they should do. The purpose of my giving this kind of some of the initial is to assure you that there really is information. If you're a follower, even you got the phone, must have a no identity device. And whether you update the phone, never update the phone, there really isn't going to be a change. It will still be a no identity device. The reason you update a phone is to fix bugs. Some are security related bugs and some are usability bugs. As a general rule, the number of security level hacks in a phone that are not state level attacks, like Pegasus or are pretty minuscule and unlikely for normal people, but are focused on high-value targets. So I don't know why cybersecurity attacks push this fun on users like there's some serious pricing. I still have an old iPhone 10 that I still run on Samsung Android that's not updated. I hardly use them, so it's not important update. If nothing is particularly broken, there's no rush to change anything. You can revisit this topic a year from now and see if something has changed, meaning if something is broken. It is my expectation that when a new Galaxy OS, if they're able to be constituted in new form, then likely it will be like installing a new OS, and that means update. My counsel on this is to make sure you back up your contract and your phone somewhere else, so that if you have to install, there's no price. Don't wait for the last minute to discover that your phone is right. This isn't going to happen directly based on what's going on with colors, but in the phone itself needs a battery and so on. If you want to play it safe, I advise that you shift to using DOD for the Pixel. This is based on Lineage OS. This should have long-term support. You will lose data, so you can like to pull it in backup. Now, there will be no secure boot, but as I already said, this will not be concerned for Village OS is updated with the latest drivers and code from the original Android installed on the Pixel, and this receives regular updates. So EOD OS will automatically receive all the fixes. EOD OS is much better than Lineage OS for privacy because of several limitations of Lineage OS in its base form. Lineage OS does not allow major version number updates over the air. Lineage OS does not have privacy respecting apps and app stores like Word Store, F-Droid, and microchip integration.
Just integration.
This is the stuff you find in EOD OS, and of course, also on Galaxy OS. So for this reason, I also do not recommend installing a base Lineage OS on your phone. Regardless of the promises
Thank you.
of the Graphene OS community, I would not change it, since they are just jerry-rigging the source code for now and without future source code access. So you're just opening yourself up to further pain in the future on Pixel. By the way, you can go from one Android custom ROM to another, like Galaxy OS without issue. The real point of concern is that you can never downgrade Android. So if the new OS you're installing is older than the Galaxy version, then you might actually have to reinstall Android that came with the phone just to start at a lower version of it. So you never have to log in. But for this reason, I wouldn't rush to install the Lineage Galaxy using Android 16. I would not install that since EOD is still on 15. This is an example where putting the latest and greatest actually adds its other headwinds, though they're perhaps unrelated to the Galaxy OS event, but related to government manipulation of systems. Some of you may have heard that the EU is designing systems for age verification. Basically, you record your identity and age with a central authority, and it is now your ID card on the internet without revealing your name. The problem with these kinds of systems is that they will often force you to work with specific modules, ones that are closed source and work only with in production Google phones. An example where this has already happened is in places like Sweden and some other parts of Europe, where banking apps are tied to safety. This means that those EU banking apps will fail on devices that are not connected to Google, like Google's phone. You can see the level of frustration on stuff like this is constant. It wouldn't surprise me if IDs were tied to the Titan M chip and iOS Secure Enclave, since, as I said, these actually supply unique identifiers. There's much more I need to learn about the dangers of these security chips for privacy. When I discovered that security chips talk to HQ, I was flabbergasted. In sum, I really wish for Galaxy OS to survive. Hopefully, the source code will be there to guide the next team. I again repeat my call to make it more Galaxy that's future models. Never get access to source code. If there are skilled programmers, we need to do this. Folks, in this video, I mentioned several solutions that are actually very exciting. Again, for those that don't know this channel, I don't spend much time asking for donations. I instead just bring products that compete in the open market, and hopefully you find better value. One of the newest products is the Practice Free Fund, which is it is a community project. This fund is no idea it's not yet. The future product offers all these products will be handled on the site praxtech.net. We have our main social media site, PraxMe, and this site has a store offering several services. There's the Prax Version Fund. This is a recently launched product that offers voice over IP numbers with SMS, but is KYC free, no identity, and it is very expensive. This for two-factor authentication to keep your numbers private. We have other products that are important to the privacy of private address and encrypted traffic. We have Braxmail to allow you to please visit our social media site, PraxMe. The store is there after each month. There's a large group of people in the community who are there to help you in your privacy journey. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Without the use Celsius or Fahrenheit, it is entirely too hot right now. So let's get on with this Linux and use this way. Changing their governance model, reduce the amount of power now, and to have more of a consensus and fusion on where the desktop is going, which I think is good. To have Android using their case against Epic, meaning Android in the West, will have to be way more open, and they don't have long to do so. And what's happening in the desktop, passing 6% market share, according to multiple sources, plus a bunch of other things, including this message. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. It's your all-in-one platform to create, publish, and manage websites. Squarespace has really easy tools to make sure that anyone can enter a really nice looking and well-optimized website, no matter if you know how to code. They have what they call their blueprint system, which lets you click from a variety of templates and builds, and will suit any type of website, whether it's a simple blog, an online store, a video platform, whatever. All these templates are optimized by default to give you good SEO, but they also add some SEO specific tools on top of that to make sure that your website just doesn't end up on the last page of Google. On top of that, to go further, Squarespace has their own design engine to create your pages. You just drag and drop elements when you want them. You can change the colors, the fonts. You can just move the templates however you need. And once you have something you like, you can add extra features like your own online shop with payment system. You can design your own logo from Squarespace. You can go to your own domain name to have an easy to remember address. So check out squarespace.com/Linux experiment, or just click the link in the description below, and you get 10% off your website purchase. Okay, so early this week there was a non-post to present a new implement efficient governance of the GNOME project, basically outlining one way that GNOME can have a formal process for travelers to propose changes to the desktop, sort of similar to what Fedora does right now. The goal is obvious, avoiding having segmented discussions in issue trackers that will be left to the decision of one maintainer or of one opinion, and instead spreading decision power and responsibility so the project can be moved forward effectively instead of having multiple little kingdoms. The general idea is to have a place to submit formal proposals to everyone that might get involved and get those proposals accepted or rejected. It's then transparent, it is visible of everyone, and everyone will know what needs to be done and how. The idea would also be to have an editorial team around to make sure that the proposal is legible, follows the guidelines and the expected proposal sequence. Finally, a steering group would vote on those proposals based on the feedback of everyone involved, including the community, and the group that votes would be made up of representatives of all teams from the GNOME project. The idea also proposes the creation of special interest groups for the GNOME SDK, for the desktop, for apps, basically big umbrellas of helping share that responsibility and also alleviating the workload in
Morning.
every part of the groups and maybe helping
Dimensional.
avoid burnout. The phrasing of this thing is pretty clear cut. It's very clearly saying that people who want to keep all the control over their own area of the GNOME project are not really welcome if they don't want to play nice with others and share the decision process, and that their code can actually live outside of GNOME perfectly fine. But if you want to be part of the GNOME project, you're going to have to play nice with a decision-making committee. I would assume the idea is to avoid a project being blocked by one person who receives a clear part of GNOME because they don't like the language being used, using itself, moving positions, or whatever it is. Now, this looks like it's actually how things are going to go, not just a proposal on how to implement a decision-making process. It seems like this is how things are going to be run from now on. And I think it's great. It's been working out really well for Fora. All those proposals are transparent. The community can discuss them outside of the proposal wiki page itself. And those opinions seem to be taken into account, as we've seen with the opposition to drop 32 bit support. The community reacted pretty vehemently against that, and that opinion was retracted. If GNOME has the same kind of process, I think it's really good, really transparent, and probably also way more efficient. It lays out an entire vision for the project that everyone can be informed of, and I think that's really good. Also this week, the Linux desktop seems to have reached around 6% market share worldwide. Lamps, which is a company that offers software that maps your entire fleet of devices, whatever, probably they IT tools usually basically using their software, they analyzed 15 million computers from their customers and companies, and they found that the Linux desktop accounts for 6% of these computers. Other studies or numbers seem to confirm that number as well. For example, the website for the US hospitals show the same percent. It's not the same market share in July. It's not counting across visits, which obviously it's not even necessarily higher than that. That's where we scout 15 million of the super PCs, which are basically isolated computers, yet this is and also 3.5 million business computers being part of management active. These are PCs inside the also have to let developers tell users about all the ways that they can buy stuff or subscribe to things. They have to let developers link to their applications outside of the Google Play Store, and they have to let developers set their own prices on everything they sell. But also, Google will no longer be allowed to pay carriers, phone makers, and application developers for Google Play exclusivity or for pre-installing Google Play. The judge also gave Google 8 months of retention. Seniors during that time frame. This is all in the US for what's not in the EU. And I'm trying to get out of the right wall and back. Carriers and filmmakers are the only force to implement like application developers are forced to provide exclusivities and times and also we will do this on Android or storage in the future apps right from like without having to keep going with which app is allowed to download the platform, which source, just not going to be much better than this. That's what we're doing for uploading the system and putting lots of that. There's some changes coming to MX Linux as well with the next major MX 25. This is an issue that often either says 5 minutes or system D as the system straight from the ISO units. This is one of the system TS distribution. But the solution that they use to handle that is no longer viable. The changes made to Debian 13, which is what they're going to use as their base for MX25. And so now users will have to pick when downloading the ISO whether they want to use MX with System D or MX with sys5.8. The catch is the default editions now use System D either LE, XFC, and Fuzzy. It's like System D. Some of its it is a relatively easy fix. You just have to install the package. It enables 22-bit emulation and another one that sets an SE Linux policy as well. But Steam has also been dropped from the non-open source software repo of OpenSUSE, so chances are it will be easier for this to that package. It's not the best implementation of Steam out there. Plenty of bugs to be fixed in that Steam. That backup. That's other changes for your system include replacing app armor by its limits, something that will definitely need some adaptation from C7. App armor is still available for Colorado, but I think it's community maintained, not officially maintained by the system. It also brings XFC with running out of the box, so it is experimental. Something fast is replaced by two different views, working for construction, and if you run 15.6 and want to upgrade to 16, will need to run in the microcontroller. It's not the ask to switch to 5 wireless AC units. Will build a little helper to let you do that in a bit more efficient fashion. It sounds like a major update to OpenSUSE, which is really nice. It also seems like it's going to be a bit of a headache for system administrators migrating to this version. There might be a lot of relearning to do, which can be either super fun or super unwanted, depending on how much you like tinkering with your computer. Also, in terms of distro releases, don't worry, I know Debian 13 releases today on Saturday, the day I'm publishing this, and you can expect a video about it on the channel, maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday, well, next week. Microsoft said that they wanted to make their WinUI library open source once they separated from the proprietary Windows code. WinUI is sort of the framework, or maybe one of the big frameworks that Microsoft uses and provides developers to build applications on Windows. It works with the Win32 API, with .NET, C++, and while it is not necessarily something us Linux users will worry about, it is nice to have that stuff open source entirely because it means, first, maybe we could have a re-implementation of it on Linux, so it will help with running Windows software, fine, or just porting Windows software to Linux. It also means we could potentially participate in its development, so it supports Linux natively. Microsoft is going to open this up in multiple steps. First, they're going to often, because right now it's sort of like the new development method for Android, they just publish. Sometimes if they drop some source code, it's not the entirety of the project and you can't follow each individual commit release. Second, they will let developers clone and build that entire repo, built locally on their devices with all the documentation needed. And finally, they'll open the repo to third-party contributions and centralize everything on GitHub. So the code for WinUI is already open on GitHub, but it seems to be lacking a few elements. You can't really build it yourself because it still depends on some elements of Windows, and you can't participate in the development process at all, or even just follow it along. So it is open, sort of, it's like source available under an open source license. You still have all the building blocks, so it's not fully there. I think it's cool. If this doesn't amount to anything, it doesn't hurt to have it sourced, but if it can actually help white developers running more Windows applications through white, then it's good. If it helps developers port their apps to Linux because we have maybe a re-implementation or a compatibility layer for WinUI, this would also be pretty nice. So fingers crossed this helps with Windows software on Linux. This could help bridge the app gap. And we have some good news for free and open source graphics drivers. Mesa 25.2 was released, and it is a big update to that entire stack. OpenGL 4.6 is now supported, depending, of course, on the driver you're using. Some older ones will not support it, and some newer ones might need a bit more additional work. But the API itself is in there. Vulkan 1.4 is also in there, Vulkan video support for the latest AMD GPUs. And interestingly, OpenCL is also making progress. Plenty of OpenCL extensions being added, meaning maybe OpenCL won't be such a pain in the future on Linux. Support has always been very patchy, depending on the hardware you have, what the application requiring OpenCL needs or uses. There were plenty of implementations. Some work with certain apps, some don't with others. It's a mess. So if we can have a standard, strong, full implementation of OpenCL in Mesa, that would be good. Mesa also started to deprecate some X11 related stuff, notably DRI2 support. This framework for user space to GPU communication is more than 13 years old. It was superseded by DRI3 free shortly after its initial release. So don't worry, it doesn't mean Mesa is dropping X11 support anytime soon. They're just cleaning up some old stuff. You can also expect fixes for Vulkan shader compilation, Chrome video acceleration, and for specific games and apps at the driver level. Of course, depending on your distro, you will either get that quickly or not at all. It just depends on your distro's update policy. But as always, it's free driver updates for everyone, and it helps bring your support level up, fix some bugs, get some better. So it's and to conclude, Nextcloud published their digital sovereignty index this week, which is an arbitrary number from 0 to 100 and is intended to reflect how much of the publicly visible of the country's economy is either self-hosted, that is entirely controlled by the owners, whether they set rules, control infrastructures, and the like, in a position to being hosted by big tech on a giant cloud provider or just using big tech cloud services. This includes individuals, businesses, big or small, but also the governments themselves. It is because what they do is just count the number of servers that are, as they call it, sovereign or bring their digital sovereignty across 50 different applications like email servers, video conferencing, group chat, notes, project management, basically probably all the stuff that Nextcloud does themselves. Now, if we look at the numbers, Finland seems to be the best at this in the world, well, not right? Followed by Germany. Everything else has extremely low scores. France is at 25.10, the US is at 14, or almost 15. The average for EU in general is 16.41, which is really, really bad. It's much closer to 0, which is the worst score, than to 100, which is the best one. Now, of course, this number doesn't mean anything in isolation. It is only useful in comparison with itself as it evolves and between countries. It is obviously something that Nextcloud decided upon. As I said, it represents regular users. It just counts individual servers. There's no moderation on the importance of a specific company or a specific government. They still track 7.2 million servers across 50 countries, which is not nothing. As Nextcloud tracks those numbers over time, which they will repeat that index regularly, it will give us an indication on whether the current talks about digital sovereignty are actually being followed up with any action, or if it's actually getting worse and more people are going back to like the Googles, the Apples, the Microsoft, or using like AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, and hopefully it goes in the right direction, meaning digital sovereignty is big tech services. But I'm not sure that this is going to happen because everyone who talks about digital sovereignty generally does a nice little backflip, turns around and brings back to the big companies afterwards. And it's time to leave you on this message from our sponsor, Tuxedo Compute. We all know about them by now. Tuxedo is a hardware manufacturer. They have laptops and this is a Microsoft 2003 Word document. Oh my God, is that Clippy? Ladies and gentlemen, this is Windows XP, and that is one of Microsoft Office's greatest virtual assistants. Now, the last day, I've basically seen my comment section flooded with links. And a lot of that actually has to do with this Rossman. He made a pretty good video where, again, it kind of really inspired me to sort of kind of talk about this because it's been something that I've been yelling into the heavens for years now, okay? You know, I'm not going to sit here and blackpill you and say the world is just dark and depressing in a lot of ways. It is, but there's ways for you to take back a little bit of control in your life. Now, why are we talking about Clippy, aside from it being, you know, a little cute Microsoft product? Well, because Clippy, no matter how you want to cut it, just likes to help. Now, you can animate Clippy, make him do a lot of scientific thinking, and some people may not know this, but there's different types of Clippies, okay? You've got Clippy right here, or Clippy. And then, of course, you've got the dot. Of course, you've also got F1 for whatever reason. You would enable this, the Office logo, and of course, you've even got some magicians and Mother Nature. Now, to give you an idea, Clippy is important because it's one of the first eras of actual artificial intelligence. Nowadays, you've got things like Microsoft Copilot, you've got ChatGPT, City, Claude, every single type of AI. But if you wanted to Clippy, all you could do is say, "Hey, Clippy, help me write a memo," for instance. And Clippy would be nice enough to just give you a couple of these options on the side. Clippy would not be reading through your information. Clippy would not be sending your information to Microsoft servers so they could make their AIs better off of your personal information. So you could just ask Clippy, "Yeah, I'm going to make a memo," and it would just guide you. It would be like file, new, and then of course you would just do in new documents and templates. On my computer, of course, memos, pick any one of these. Let's go to the professional one and boom, Clippy helped me out. Now, I think it was easy to rip on Clippy back in the day, but of course, it wasn't just that, okay? I think Clippy was a harmless character. And granted, he didn't really do much to help at the end of the day, compared to his other friend, Bonzi Buddy. And, Bonzi Buddy was a pretty nice fellow, too. You could right click on him, you could ask him, "Hey, tell me a joke." "Why can't you play jokes on snakes?" "Because you can never pull your legs. I amused myself with that one." Damn, he got the whole jungle laughing with that one. But of course, with all these characters, you could basically just have all of these little goofy, 90s or, early 2000 AIs just basically act the way that they did without interfering with your personal information. I forgot why that was considered malware. Jesus Christ, what a genuinely uninteresting piece of software. My God, it felt like an actual hemorrhoid in my hands. But one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about is obviously with a lot of tech companies these days, things have really dramatically changed. One of the things that people really don't talk about, but I want to bring up was back in 2012, one of the most disgusting things that happened over on Facebook. Now, obviously, we all know the history of Facebook. One day a DARPA project happens, and on the same day, Facebook is born. Okay, no weird, shady coincidence there. But one of the things about Facebook is it's one of the biggest social media networks that everybody has kind of used, right? Like all of us have probably played around with Facebook at some point. But I don't use Facebook. In fact, I really don't use much social media. Like unless that social media does me a benefit, like maybe pays me out or something, I might engage with that. It's actually just a genuine waste of time. If I want to keep up with family and friends, I will literally just call them on my phone. Life and share photos all over the internet, especially when it appears that those photographs may be used by these companies in shady ways. Back in 2012, Facebook had launched a actual experiment on users without telling them. So for 1 week, Facebook manipulated to the extent of which people, which apparently, we're looking at 689,000, were exposed to emotional expressions in their use to test whether exposure to emotions led people to change their own posting.
So we're going to talk about it. And the other question that we see here is about symbol login aliases and different ways to simplify that. And so we have a lot of cool stuff to share. Again, these questions come from our patrons. So if you want to ask questions, support the podcast, and also interact with us a little bit more personally, that's the place to do it. You can check out how to support us down in the description. Usual suspector pretty much is looking for phone advice here, and he or she, I suppose, said they currently have an old iPhone that soon won't get new security updates. So they're wondering how the current state is for phones. And we have a specific phone and OS recommendation. They did test an OS called Vola OS. So far, it seems to work quite well out of the box, and it's easy to set up, but they don't like the phone itself, so they're looking for something else. For me, it seems one of the best choices are one of the Pixel phones, as they will get the latest Android versions the fastest. However, if I use stock Android, there's a concern regarding many Google services, and the possibility to install custom ROM as well exists there. We have iPhones with iOS that, to my knowledge, has a quite good focus on privacy and security, but it comes with a less freedom to customize, and we know a lot of those limitations, which we'll touch on soon. They watched Henry's video, iOS versus Android Privacy Showdown, Beyond the Surface. And yeah, that video is still pretty up to date. It kind of goes through the broader pros and cons of the actual usability differences. And to summarize that video, it goes beyond just technical pros and cons. It's more like, hey, on Android, you're going to get access to third-party app stores and these kind of cool open source tools that might help you in this area. But on iOS, you're going to get access to something like a super easy, seamless end-to-end encrypted suite for all of your data by default, which you can't really emulate on Android easily. So it's kind of pros and cons there. So to summarize the question here, I know this is a big thing, but we're going to get into it. What phones have a good compromise between privacy and security? What OS is best for privacy and security? Stock Android and custom ROM or iOS? What consequences does it have that Google has made it harder to build custom ROMs? Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. So I want to start by saying I do think it's really good for people to reflect on, just as a concept, iOS versus Android, just broadly. And it's just kind of what I've already spoke to. On iOS, everything is WebKit based. There's only one centralized app store. There's no real F-Droid. There's not a huge, awesome open source community collection of things that you can utilize. VPNs are a bit iffy on iOS. There's no like real proper system-wide VPN. There's no official Tor browser for iOS. You're not going to be able to use profiles and install Signal twice on your phone. So it's going to be a lot more restrictive. With that said, everything will work on iOS. There is no, oh, does this work? Does this not work? You can access your banking app in your browser. You can access it with the official app. You still have access to a lot of cool privacy tools. And you can still be an overall private person on iOS. Those are my general beliefs on it. And where iOS really excels right now, at least, is Apple's advanced data protection. I really do think that if Google was able to offer something like that, it would make stock Android much more competitive to iOS right now. But the reality is that on Android, there is no way to have a super nice, seamless, clean ecosystem with end-to-end encryption. You are going to have to fill it in and pretty much patch with various services, which is very possible, right? This means getting Proton Mail for email, which you have to do on iOS anyway, because that's not covered by their end-to-end encryption. But you're going to have to use Entei for photos. You're going to have to use something for your notes. You're going to have to use something for backups. I do think Google does have encrypted backups now, so that is one area that they've closed out. But my point is, iCloud, literally everything except calendar, email, and contacts would be end-to-end encrypted. And that's just built into the ecosystem. It's the same exact feature set, and you don't have to change anything. So I would say kind of reflect on those things. And then on the Android side of things, you're going to get access to F-Droid, Aurora, third-party app stores, really cool firewall plus VPN tools that just don't exist on iOS. So it's really going to come down to your use cases, and you have access to multiple accounts, profiles, etc. And it's a much more open ecosystem, like you alluded to. These aren't things you probably don't already know, but I'm saying these things for the broad listeners. Now, to answer your question, what phones have a good compromise between privacy and security? I think Nate and I would say your go-to options are going to be, yes, just plain iOS, if that works with your workflow and what you're looking for from a privacy perspective. Stop Android, and then get some of these custom ROMs. We can't really answer this directly for you, though, because it's really hard to know who you are and what kind of like workflow you're looking to have. Which OS is best for privacy and security? Probably a really solid custom ROM as a whole, if you're looking for like the overall best option, but you're also going to lose out on some other things as well if you go that route. And like you said, things are looking a little bit shaky right now, but I wouldn't make all of your decisions based on things just maybe looking shaky, because we don't have reason to think that anything's going to go away anytime soon either. The cool thing is you already use an iPhone, and so you already know what that ecosystem looks like. So maybe what I would ask you is, what were you unhappy with your iPhone? Because the only reason you're switching it out is it's running out of security updates. So what did you feel like was missing from your iPhone that would take your privacy and security journey to the next level? And ask yourself, okay, well, based on what we just shared and based on what you already know, does Android actually patch up those issues that you have? So I would really tie it more to the experience you've already been having and see, oh, okay, so which like option actually resolves my concerns the best? That's what I would do personally.
I mostly agree on a lot of points. I guess to summarize, what phones have a good compromise between privacy and security? I say this on the new oil, actually. I have a whole section about mobile devices. The only two phones I recommend paying money for are iPhones and Pixels. Y'all know I have a beef with Samsung. If somebody gave me a Samsung phone, I would chuck it in the river. But pretty much anything else, I would be like, oh, thanks. I guess I'll figure out something to do with this. But you won't catch me dead walking into a store and paying for a Motorola or well, I guess maybe Motorola if Calyx stops supporting Pixels for some reason.
What are your thoughts on Fairphone? Because I actually don't mind them either.
I would be interested to try a Fairphone. I've never had one because when I first discovered them, they were only sold in Europe and I didn't know how to get my hands on them.
They still mostly are, but I guess you can like Marina kind of sells them is what it is, right?
I think so, yeah. That was actually kind of my backup plan when the whole thing with like the Pixel device tree going away came out and we were still kind of trying to understand it. Is I was like, well, if I can't flash a Pixel anymore, I'll probably get my hands on a Fairphone and start because I don't use SIM card anyways. So what do I care if it's not in the right band for America? I'd be interested to try it. So yeah, I think iPhone and Pixel are going to be your best bet. What OS is best for privacy and security? I will go ahead and say I think it's Graphene. I think they really do strip a lot of stock stuff out. They obviously do a lot of hardening. In this week's episode, I mentioned how if you go read Calyx's documentation, there is a reason that they do a lot of things they do. So for example, one of the things they get criticized for is they still do DNS checks with Google. And their logic is that, first of all, nothing sensitive gets handed over during a connection check except your IP address, which Calyx ships with like 2 or 3 free VPNs by default. And number three, you can change connectivity checks to turn off if you want. But number two is they are going with the whole idea of like blending in with the traffic as opposed to using a custom server. So Graphene, for example, they do connectivity checks with their own servers. So it's, what we said in the main episode is like, it's just a different approach. They're trying to do different things. Graphene is trying to de-Google as much as humanly possible, or as much as technically possible, while Calyx is trying to find a balance between like privacy, but blending in, like it's just different philosophies. So that is why I say, like, I think Graphene is the most private and secure, but I think things like Calyx are still going to be a hell of a lot better than stock Android. When it comes down to like stock Android versus iOS, I would argue that stock iOS is more private and secure, but at the same time, I also argue that make a lot of meaningful changes. Like you can use it without ever having to sign in. Like Henry said, you can replace a lot of the apps with privacy respecting apps. You can use like Aurora Store and F-Droid and things like that. You can also use ADB to nuke a lot of the stock apps, which for the record, I've heard conflicting reports. Like some people say it basically just hides the app, but either way, it's still going to be a lot more private than signing in and using it the way it was intended. You said
New message from Say, Terminal 2 Domestic Jetstar.
because that has been temporarily removed from the board if you're not an existing user. But with Graphene, they are notorious for sometimes pushing updates faster than Google. I've heard that claim. I've never seen it.
New message from Say, thank you.
And 90% of the time, I see like Ars Technica is like, oh, Google released their monthly security update today. Here's what's in it. And then anywhere from like later that day to 2 days later, Graphene is like, here's the full package. And then the last thing you said, what are the consequences that Google has made it harder? We don't know. We're still feeling that out. Right now, the main consequence seems to be slowed development time, but it still remains to be seen how that's going to play out long term. Something I did forget to talk about in the main episode is I've heard some people speculate that AOSP is kind of circling the drain and may not be around much longer. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, like within the next 12 to 18 months at least, which I know is kind of a short time frame when we're talking about buying a phone that gets like 7 years of security updates. But right now, Google is still under a lot of scrutiny for antitrust and anti-monopoly laws. And it actually just took an L recently with the Play Store, I think it is, and sideloading and stuff like that. So I don't think we're going to wake up tomorrow and see a headline that like Google has killed AOSP. I think we've still got a little bit of life left in it. But if you want to think worst case scenario and ask yourself, what would I do if AOSP goes away? Then I think we're back to what Henry said at the end, which is it really comes down to you. It comes down to what are your values? Like the reason I moved away from iPhone is because I wanted access to those custom ROMs. And ironically, I also wanted access to some of those Android only apps like Briar. And now that I'm on a custom ROM, there's a lot of iPhone only or Mac only security apps that are really interesting that I wish I could try out, but I don't have an iPhone at the moment. So yeah, like what are you looking for? Are you looking for ease of use and security? Then I think iPhone is probably going to be the way to go. Are you looking for maximum level of privacy? Then yes, you should definitely get a Pixel and put a custom OS on it. It really depends on what you want, and also what works for you. And I guess the last thing I'll say is the saving grace of a custom OS is that all of them offer instructions for how to roll back to stock. So if you buy a Pixel and you try Graphene and it doesn't work, like the app doesn't work on your phone, and you try Calyx you can't try Calyx right now, but hypothetically, you try Calyx, the app doesn't work on your phone. You can always put stock Android right back on there, and it'll work just fine. So it may not be ideal, and it may not be preferable to iOS, depending on how you feel about that. I know that's a very divisive topic. Divisive. But the thing you can rest easy in is knowing that you will not be able to creep. You will have a usable phone. And our second question this week came from Yalvin. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. You said, hey there, thanks for your time and great work. Thank you for your patience with episodes lately. From me to all of you. You said, I'm looking at my simple login aliases and I'd like to clean it up. Getting the premium version would be the way to go. You said you will have many more domain names. From what I understand, it isn't specifically useful to most people. I just want to cleaned up and per service email. So I have like my bank at mydomain.com, Twitch at mydomain.com. However, if I share this account with a partner, they would use their own domain to separate. I'm a Proton user, but did not link my account to Simple Login because not all eggs in the same basket in terms of password. I only pay for the VPN, so I don't really care for the other advantages. So your questions, how should I use domain names like I suggested above or not? Would there be any chance of getting blocked because it's not a mainstream domain? What advice would you give to create a domain name except from shorter is better and easy to write and just pronounce? How useful is it really having a per service email when I only have access to one phone number living in the EU? Thanks in advance. Okay, so how to use domain names. There's a lot of different ways to go about this. Okay, so first of all, I've written a few blog posts about this. I made a video about this, which I should probably redo because I've kind of simplified since then. So first of all, I really want to address, there is this concern that I see a lot in the community where if you have a custom domain, doesn't that make it easier to track? And I don't think so. Now I don't have any evidence for this either way, but here's my logic. 99% of people are using Gmail, Yahoo, MSN, Outlook, something like that, right? And 99% of people only have, I think the average is like 2.5 emails or just under 2 emails. So most people have like a personal email, a professional email, and maybe like a spam email. So if they're signing up for something they know is going to get like shopping or newsletters, and then they have like one email for job hunting, and then they have one email for like emailing grandma, things like that. So it doesn't make sense to say, let's find everybody using Gmail when Gmail has 70% of the email market. They're going to look at specific email addresses. They're looking for how many people are using Joe Rogan at gmail.com. And how many times does that email show up? The only thing I want to suggest is I would not use my bank at mydomain.com because I'm about ready to start throwing punches at people who do not understand how email works. Because I have gone to so many places now where I show up and I'm not expecting to turn over email. So I just make up an email address on the spot because wildcard. So I'll go to, let's say, Olive Garden. I go to Olive Garden and they're like, hey, if you sign up for the newsletter, you get $5 off your meal. And I'm like, sure, I can always delete it later. So Olive Garden at mydomain.com. And I swear they give me the most deer in the headlights confused look. And they're like, Olive Garden at my, do you work for Olive Garden? And it's like, no, it's just an email address. Wait, how do you have an Olive Garden email address? And it's like, oh my God, so now I've literally just started looking around the room and I'm like, microphone at mydomain.com. Like,
Microphone in Olive Garden.
yes, exactly. I don't know why I brought a microphone to Olive Garden, but apparently I did. But yeah, so like seriously, stay away from Twitch at mydomain.com because like that is just asking for confusion and you're going to get so frustrated. What advice would you give to create a domain name? I don't know. I think you hit the nail on the head. Whatever you need. I would just say something that you're not ashamed to say out loud and share with people would be the main one. And how useful is it to have a per service email? I use the crap out of it. Personally, I don't know what that has to do with phone number. I don't really hand out my phone number very often, to be honest. Maybe it's different in Europe, but around here, I make a new email address for everything because a lot of these data breaches we cover, what do they have? Email address, password, IP address, username, usually a hash password if they're doing things right. There's not a lot of them that have phone. I mean, some of them have phone number, but it's not as common as email address. And then I also know exactly where the breach is coming from. When I start getting spam and I log into Simple Login and I'm like, oh, it's coming from here. And then on top of it, I can feel safe nuking that email address. Like, I don't have to go like, oh, but if I shut this off, there's like 5 other things that I'm getting emails for now. Like, just, oh, cool. Yeah, I hope that was coherent. I don't know. I feel like that was extra rambly, but I think that's all I got.
Yeah, I guess all I can share is what I do. I just use simple login aliases for everything. I don't see many reasons not to. And for me, it's even more than privacy. It's a usability thing because then I am able to tell exactly where an spam email came from. I can disable an email just like that, and it's no big deal. And I can also swap out the behind-the-scenes mailbox and really move between mail providers. So for me, it's purely a usability thing. And also I use Proton Pass. So it's literally just as easy for me to put in. It's actually easier for me to like use Proton Pass's generate alias email than it is for me to type out a known email, if that makes sense. So it's literally just more convenient for me. There's one thing I have been thinking about, So this is my counterpoint, and I don't know if I'm going to do this yet. Something changed in the last couple of years, or maybe like the last year, when it comes to like verification of identities, especially when it comes to opening bank accounts in the US. And I talked about this quite a bit with Douglas in an interview on TechLore, who runs a service called Privacy Post. And what this is, it's like a private mailbox service, a private mailing service. And he actually does everything through Proton and through Signal. So it's like end-to-end encrypted. It's a pretty cool service. And, you know, he was talking about too, how these credit bureaus, bank accounts, et cetera, they're using really sophisticated ways now to like essentially crack down on people using private mailboxes for their address. And I've had issues with this. So when I apply for a new bank or anything like this, I've been having quite a few issues when it comes to using typically addresses that are fully okay for me to use. The reason I bring this up is that some of these, when I dug into a bit more of like the privacy policies, some of them do seem to verify by email as well. Like if this is like a legitimate request. I don't know how true that is, or like how much these things are massive black boxes, so we don't know. But it's made me maybe just want to establish like a credit/bank centralized unified email. So it's like, yeah, this is my actual email. And then it's literally only used for that and nothing else, if that makes sense, just to kind of plant that flag. I don't know if it'll make a difference. It's purely speculative, purely hypothetical. I wouldn't recommend people just do this unless it doesn't really impact them, but that's something I've been considering doing recently. Otherwise, I use Basis for literally everything else and still do. I still haven't made this switch.
So you don't use a lot of custom domains?
No, I actually haven't even linked a custom domain to my simple token account.
So the only reason I've started leaning into custom domains is because if in the future I ever want to switch from Simple Login to someone else, that kind of future proofs me. I can go, whether Simple Login shuts down or I can stop wanting them for whatever reason, somebody else offers me. I can move my custom domain to the other provider, and especially if I can enable wildcard, and boom, they're all just
It's pretty cool. And so that is it for the Q&A this week. Again, we gave a lot of thoughts on phone stuff. Hopefully there's something useful there. I know we share a lot. And then also a lot of thoughts on alias emails. We want to thank you all for asking questions. We appreciate you for not just asking them, but supporting what we do and making it so that we can keep this podcast hopefully growing for years and years. So thank you all for listening, engaging, and being a part of things. And you can also join next week's Q&A already right now by going down in the description and supporting us either on XMR Chat through Monero or on Patreon. We'll see you next time.
What if the privacy trust is designed to display? You were told a VPN would keep you safe online. It would protect your privacy. But what if the tool you just downloaded for safety was actually built to watch you? What if the tool you installed for privacy quietly recorded your behavior, your app usage, your habits, your online patterns, and sold access to that data? In this video, you'll learn how the most dangerous VPN ever created went undetected for years, how a major tech giant used it to spy on teens and crush competitors, and why today's trusted VPNs are still using the same blueprint. I spent months combing through emails, court documents, and various privacy policies that were never supposed to be written. What I found wasn't illegal, but it was disturbing because the system was built to allow it. This story isn't about one bad company. It's about how the entire VPN industry got away with it, how trust became a business model, and why the next time someone promises you privacy, you'll know what to look for. Back in 2013, Facebook bought this small Israeli app called Onavo. It was built by cyber intelligence veterans from Unit 8200. The specialty in that unit was traffic interception, behavioral analytics, and deep packet inspection. On the surface, Onavo was marketed as a data saver, but in reality, it was the most powerful data ever deployed on one service. The function installed packet data on people and background process and every tap was routed through servers owned by Facebook, and giving full visibility into which apps you use, how often, how long you stayed, and what you phones. And in some cases, even the content itself. It was full spectrum traffic surveillance. Facebook used it to spy on competitors, especially Snapchat. By 2016, Snapchat had basically taken over as the go-to app for Gen Z. Teenagers looked at Facebook and Instagram with developers. Facebook needed to know fast just how quickly that shift was happening. Then Snapchat improved its traffic, and Onavo was now gone. So somewhere it says team up here direct. We need reliable analytics about Snapchat. You should figure out how to do Facebook engineers launched something called Project Ghostbusters. It was a way to bypass HTTPS encryption and was showing its ability to Snapchat and YouTube possibility and other apps. Here's how they did it. They created a fake trace to impersonate apps. They installed it before they get the portfolio. It intercepted imported traffic, it encrypted that traffic and logged it, and then sending it. From the user side, everything looked normal. But in reality, Facebook had just carried out a big vanilla attack. The exact kind of tactic you'd expect from spyware for states to run programs. And the people they tested on were teenagers aged 13 to 17. They were offered $20 in gift cards to Facebook for global access to their phones. And Facebook's global VPS security card. And notice the person is dead. Eventually, it's going to get told. Apple banned it on the whole by people who make phones. So Facebook was really there. Facebook research named it on their benefits. It used methods to analyze situations and steps to see needs and valuables. Bypassing the option entirely. They're working still teenagers. Okay, and get each teen exactly to make all the fun and get first to slow down access. It only stopped in tech of sorting the things and respond to the case was impressive things. And so we don't never be able to make it but did they actually stop? We had to work to find the end. We had to love the money. We had many million dollars in Facebook's records. This is a long-term business model that everyone can back by to again, this is where they have to be careful and to be example. It's just having to create special people like information. So here's what we're going to do. Investigators found out master and under VPN, all tied to a parent firm connected to 260. I was US government national security risks. Their ownership was massive in Cayman Islands and Singapore registered jets, but the traffic was routed really questionable. I just had no idea. These absolute millions of downloads. Meanwhile, ExpressVPN estimated by hand it was almost every hour. Project Radio. That's they use that US line. That's the kind of decision that tells you exactly what kind of company to like. And it gets worse when you get all the tools these companies make. That's websites, ads, and communications. Those are the biggest ones. No laws. If they want to see companies outright marketing, anything that is not is usually a one-time thing, outdated or only done on one server, with limited configuration. If the laws do exist, they in 2020, 7 no-log VPNs, including UFO VPN and Super VPN, were about 1.2 terabytes of exposed user log, names, IPs, session timestamps, all wide open. All of them were running on the same white label encryption. All use fake company names and all need the same hollow price. By the mid 2010s, VPNs had a problem. Nobody outside of niche tech forums cared about them. So the companies behind them pivoted and they started paying creators. And it works. People didn't think it was toothpaste. Audiences listened because trust scales a lot faster than truth. And here's what no one talks about. Most creators, 60 to 70% of their income comes from sponsorships, and VPN companies pay really well. It's $5,000 for a mid-tier channel and up to $25,000 per integration for bigger leads, plus lifetime commissions on every sign-up. That's 30 to 50% of every subscription, 4 years going to creators. In 2023, researchers revealed 243 VPN ads on YouTube. 80% of them made false claims about immunity, traffic protection, and security. And the vast majority of users never checked the actually work. There's no incentive to verify a product when it truly is better than culture. But this isn't about blaming creators, it's about the system. Because of capitalism, trusting lots of products, it's still for sale. Price doesn't stand a chance. And this is also why I've never accepted we need to figure out exactly what makes a VPN worth trusting, which ones actually pass the test, and what to use instead if you really want to protect yourself. Let's clear something up. Because most people don't actually understand what a VPN is. And we don't. I assume a VPN is just a private tunnel. It encrypts your traffic between your device and the VPN tunnel. And it hides your IP address from your internet service provider or ISP. That's it. Here's what that tunnel one step further. Sometimes using a VPN isn't just ineffective, it actually really wrong. If you care about true anonymity, you're a journalist, an activist, and this is correct, you should not be relying on it. VPNs are centralized. That means logs can be subpoenaed. Even no log providers may still collect connection metadata. The VPN endpoint knows your IP and maybe even your payment info. And you're still wide open to fingerprints and behavior-based tracking. So if you're trying to dodge surveillance capitalism, a VPN won't save you. It won't block Google or Facebook or the thousands of analytics libraries buried in your app. But what you need is browser hardware and a serious rethink of your entire device setup. That said, VPNs can still be the right tool. It just depends on your situation. They're genuinely useful when you're on public Wi-Fi with protection for video attacks. If you're trying to bypass school, work, or government firewalls. If you want access to blocked content like different Netflix regions or censored news. You don't trust your ISP or your country's network infrastructure, or you're trying to reduce your tracking service by masking your IP. So yes, VPNs still have a place, but you've also got to know when to use them and which ones you can actually trust. So what should you demand from a VPN before you even consider it? Here's a checklist. If they don't pass every single point along the way. Full scope third-party audit, not just a no loss claim. I mean the whole infrastructure, clients, servers, logging policies. No audit means no trust. Transparent ownership. It can trace the owner of the company, where they're based, who's on the team. If not, it's in their rights. Open source clients. If you can't see what the software is doing on your machine, you can't verify single making. Anonymous payment options. They don't require a credit card or PayPal. You're tying your identity to your usage. Cash, manual, crypto, or nothing. No connection metadata. No logs, shipping, no logs, everything's timestamps, and with session items. If they keep any of it, it's a red flag. Price list features. Kill switches, nesting protection, trial support, Tor bridge or multi-hop routing, and custom DNS resolver support. And finally, it must be paid, no exceptions. If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And if any of that is missing, that's not a privacy tool, that is spyware. So, which VPNs have actually earned the security community's trust? These are the few providers that meet the bar. Just what the security community actually respects. First, we have Molten. It's based in Sweden, no email required, and accepts cash by mail. It's fully audited and has open source clients. It offers Tor bridge support, and it is best for privacy maxed users who don't want to hand over any identity whatsoever. Next up, we have IVPN. It's based in Gibraltar. They have transparent audits and team disclosures, and they block ads and trackers at the network level. It has anonymous sign-up and crypto payments. This one is best for users who want privacy by default and strong ethics under the hood. And here we have Proton VPN. It is based in Switzerland. They have transparent ownership, which is by the Proton Mail team. It's audited and open source, and they have a generous free tier with no data caps. But Switzerland may still enforce VPNs to log metadata. However, Proton has said they'll relocate the log access, and they started moving their infrastructure. It is best for beginners who want a trustworthy, non-predatory VPN they can grow with. Now, these are the perfect tools, but they are trustable and in a space where most others are built to extract, mislead, and exploit. So, what should you use instead or alongside a VPN? Most people treat VPNs as the holy grail of privacy, but in 2025, they're often the least important part of your setup because what actually makes you trackable usually has nothing to do with your IP address. It's your browser, your behavior, your DNS traffic, your apps, your device ID. A VPN doesn't touch any of that. So if you actually want to reduce your exposure, you need layers. And these tools do more for your privacy than any sponsored VPN ever will. So first we have DNS over HTTPS or DOM. Let's start with what almost nobody configures, DNS. Every time you visit a website, your computer makes a DNS request asking, where is the site located? By default, those requests are plain text, meaning your internet service provider or ISP and anyone else on the network can see everything you try and visit, even with HTTPS, even with a VPN, unless your VPN encrypts DNS too. DNS over HTTPS fixes that. It encrypts your DNS lookups and sends them through a trusted resolver like NextDNS, Cloudflare, or Control. You can even self-host if you're advanced. If your goal is to stop your ISP from tracking your browsing, DOH handles it cleanly without rerouting all of your traffic through a VPN provider that you don't even know. Next, we have Tor browsing. Tor reroutes your traffic through 3 relays, so no single point sees both who you are and where you're going. It's a powerful tool, but it's not a magic flow. It's not true anonymity, and using it wrong breaks it fast. If you log into a personal account on Tor, you need to write it. If you act like it's a normal browser by opening tabs, resizing windows, watching YouTube, with your account logged in, you fingerprint yourself. Tor is best when used carefully with no personal logins and with tight understanding of threat modeling. For higher situations where you need to reduce visibility, it works. But if you don't need that level of obfuscation, skip it. You'll just slow things down and expose yourself anyway. Next, we have hardened Firefox. Most privacy leaks happen in the browser, not in the network. So start with using Firefox. Install uBlock Origin, disable WebRTC, kill telemetry, use container tabs, and now your browser isn't leaking fingerprints, system info, or third-party cookies every time you load a page. You're already miles ahead of most people using a VPN alone. Browser isolation. If you're using one browser for everything from banking, crypto, work, and research, then you're fully linked, even with a VPN. So split your activity. Put crypto in one browser, personal accounts in another, work in a container tab or a virtual machine, and research in a hardened setup. Compartmentalization breaks the cross connections that ad tech depends on. Even if one part gets exposed, the rest of your identity stays sealed. And self-hosted VPN. If all you want is encrypted traffic on public Wi-Fi, you don't need to rent that tunnel from a shady provider. Spin up your own WireGuard VPN on a $5 virtual private server, and now you control the endpoint without any mystery logs or surveillance as a service or anonymous. It won't make you anonymous, but it will protect you from sketchy routers, firewalls, and lazy ISPs. The bottom line is that a VPN is just one layer, and for most people, it's not even the most important one. HTTPS encrypts your actual web traffic. DNS over HTTPS hides your DNS lookups. uBlock and hardened Firefox destroy trackers, and Tor, when used correctly, offers obfuscation, not invisibility. Browser isolation breaks profiling, and self-hosted VPNs let you route traffic without selling yourself out. So if you're only asking, which VPN should I buy, you're asking the wrong question. It's not just that VPNs could watch you. Some were made for that. And the people who paid to tell you they were safe rarely checked if that was true. Companies hid behind shell firms. Creators repeated talking points, and privacy became something you bought, not something you understood. You weren't protected, you were sold to. And if that worked for you, that's because it was designed to. If this made something click for you, tap like, subscribe, and send it to someone who still thinks VPNs are safe. I want to hear more from you too. So what's one privacy tool you used to trust but now question? Drop it in the comments. And if you want the full Cyber Resistance Club, links below. Thanks for watching. What is the privacy?
To set the stage here, you might have seen this on South Park, and just fair warning, there is some violence here.
You will now watch an orientation video featuring the Director of Homeland Security. Welcome to the team, members. I'm Christian Rowe, Head of Homeland Security. A few years ago, I had to quit my company by shooting it in the face. Because sometimes doing what's important means doing what's hard. Now we'll have the same determination of you. Because detaining and questioning people is not easy. As the face of Homeland Security, I'll be leading the way. And together we'll make sure everybody in this country so let's get out and get it. Together we can make it happen. We hope you enjoyed the presentation. Please step through to the vehicles for your first grade. This is it. We're heading to a location that might make you feel with the Legos. Let's take these bad operators down.
Morning, how are you? Terminal 1 International. Be there in less than 20 minutes. Let me know the temperature is okay. If it gets cold, I can change it. here. We are ready to break.
To set the stage, explain that government is banned under 16s from social.
Today, Australia is a strategic liability because of the waning capabilities that we have. We have not manned and equipped and sustained our military, our ADF.
Across more than 80 years, Australia grew comfortable with one great security ally. Now, just this year, the relationship that seemed to protect us is under stress. The issue? What's gone wrong in our relations with the United States? And what do we do now? Who better to untangle knots in the US-Australia alliance than a dual citizen, one who spent his working life rising through two disciplines right at the sharp end of the relationship. The military. He's a long-time Special Forces soldier and brigade commander. And intelligence. He's a spook who rose to the most senior rung of American defense intelligence. Today, John Powers is tackling the issue. John Powers, thank you for joining the issue. Give us a quick summary of your career.
Well, before I start on my career, Jim, I'd first like to point out that I am an Australian, despite the accent. I became an Australian, and my wife and I in 2019. We're dual citizens, but Australia's home. We feel very fortunate to be Australian citizens.
How does a long-serving Yank become an Aussie? What happened?
I'm not certain if it's directly attributed to him, but I've been told Banjo Patterson once said that home's not where you're born, it's where you want to die. And whether Banjo Patterson said it or not, I'm going to pin it on him. We fell in love with the country, but more importantly, the people and its values and its mores. Really touched our souls. Now, this is where we hope to die.
Great to have you, John.
Thank you.
You are a Special Forces soldier turned intelligence officer and senior in intelligence. Fair?
Yes. Yeah. I spent the majority of my career in the intelligence, both in the United States military, a lot of time doing special operations, a lot of Fort Bragg time, and which is where our airborne and special forces headquarters are. And I also had many opportunities to work overseas. Throughout my career, I did a total of 13 different deployments to some of the garden spots that the U.S. was involved in. everything from Grenada to Afghanistan, and yeah, and then retired after a career of about 22 years, and immediately went into the United States intelligence community, where I served in various roles in Washington, D.C. and overseas.
ASIO boss Mike Burgess said last week,
nation states are spying at unprecedented levels and with unprecedented sophistication. You would be genuinely shocked by the number and names of countries trying to steal our secrets.
if we knew some of the countries that are trying to steal our secrets, we'd be shocked. Would we be?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I heard Director Burgess say that, and I sort of got a giggle as a professional intelligence officer.
What were you laughing at?
Well, because at least from an intelligence officer's perspective, he was talking about foreign interference. Well, intelligence officers, I can remember when I was a young officer, just getting into this business, former DCI, U.S. intelligence, which is back in the day was the director of CIA, once made a statement that there are intelligence organizations that we're friendly intelligence organizations. Even here, when I was in Australia as a senior defense intelligence officer, I wasn't trying to manipulate or to interfere with anything Australia was doing, but I was trying to influence things. That's what intelligence officers do. That's what State Department folks do.
Even if you're America, even if you're in Five Eyes.
Oh yeah. I would be shocked if the men and women that are serving in either ASIO or some of our other organizations from Australia weren't trying to do the same bloody thing. That's what you do. But there is a difference between influencing and interference. And I think that's what Director Burgess was getting at. But even if you think about it, when you're influencing something, you're attempting to interfere with a decision or a policy so that it serves to your benefit.
You're nudging decisions your way, your country's way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that happens within Five Eyes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, yes, I would say, I'm not saying the United States is here stealing. We're not, because we've got a great relationship, obviously, with the Five Eyes. But the fact that intelligence officers don't try to influence things, that's what we're paid to do. So maybe it's changed since I retired. But I can tell you when I was here,
so.
I can tell you when I was here, I was trying to influence things.
John, it looks like in the past half year or so since President Trump came to office for a second time, that our relations with the US have got far tougher. How would you describe our relationship with the United States today?
I believe that, yes, they are tougher. Now, there are those that will say that the United States is an unreliable partner. And let me just caveat one thing. I did not vote for Trump any of the times he ran. So I'm not a MAGA.
Including in 2024.
Yeah. Fortunately, in the United States, we have the ability to have a write-in candidate. So I didn't vote for either one. So I thought they were very poor choices. But we are where we are. And having been a military officer and then an intelligence officer, we truly are apolitical. We swear an oath to the Constitution of the United States. And in that fact, we work for the American people. And I can say with all honesty and sincerity and great dignity, that's the way I've conducted myself, and I still do. But in regards to the United States, I think one of the things that Mr. Trump has done is that for those who say that the United States is now an unreliable partner, an unreliable element, I would suggest to you that the United States is just as reliable as ever. As much as Mr. Trump doesn't like And he's shown a record of this for many, many years. He does not like things like NATO. He's probably not a real big fan of AUKUS. He's not a fan of the UN. He's more of a bilateral guy. That's the business guy. He accepts them. He knows he can't get rid of them, but he accepts them. And what I would say, though, is under President Trump and his administration, and is that the U.S. is a reliable partner, but they're not a gullible partner. And I think that in years past, they became, everything from whether the U.S. would always be there, whether you paid your 2% GDP to the NATO fund or some other fund, or whatever the relationship was, the United States usually would and just go ahead with it, make do, even though. But I think what's happened now is that under the Trump administration, and in particular, the U.S. is not as gullible. They're going to make demands in return, but they will still be a reliable partner. They're not going to let an ally go under, someone that we have a good, strong relationship with. And there's none stronger, I think, than our relationship with Australia.
Defence spending. Allies have long treated it as a sovereign issue. Not anymore. The Trump administration wants Australia's defence budget, now at 2% of gross domestic product, lifted sharply to 3.5%. The Albanese government's response? It's not Washington's decision to make, it's Canberra's.
They're entitled to express views, but we're entitled as a sovereign nation to ensure that we look after Australia's national interests.
What's your view on 3.5% of GDP on defence? It's tens of billions more.
Yeah, it is. Yes. I think we've underspent on defense from the standpoint of we don't have the capabilities that we need as to even defend ourselves.
Do you expect that the US will absolutely insist on that until it gets it out of Australia, our defence spending?
I think they'll keep pushing for it. I think they will. It'll be something that when the leaders, whether it's the Secretary of Defense or his minions or State Department, I think it's something they'll keep pushing on. I believe they feel the Trump administration feels that's a in today's society, that's something that Australia should be doing. And on that point, here recently there was I'm not quite certain what news poll it was, but there's been some polling done that has said, that 61% of the Australians don't like Donald Trump. That's fair. He's going to be gone in 3.5 years. He won't run again. He's not allowed to run again per our Constitution.
And you're confident the system will hold?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, and I don't think, I absolutely. There's one thing, although he pushes the constitutions to its edges, that is one I do not believe, even if they ask, the MAGA's all swelled up, I do not believe.
The 2-term limit on US presidents.
Exactly. Plus, there is, and that's why I say, if people don't like President Trump, he's going to be gone in 3.5 years. However, the MAGA base, the J.D. Vances, the Marco Rubios, the Kristi Noem, to a certain degree, the Nikki Haley's and others, those acolytes, they've bought into the MAGA idea. I think it's going to be very hard for the Democrats to come up with somebody to run against either a Vance, a Rubio, or a Noem in 2028.
As an ally, we need to get used to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not only get used to it, but figure out a way how you're going to deal with it.
As well, John Powers reckons it's about Australia facing up to some deficiencies in defence. Powers knows defence. He served on 13 deployments in every US theatre of war from Grenada in 83 to Afghanistan, rising to command about 4,000 troops. There is one area that stands out for the long-time soldier turned spook.
ISR is near and dear to my heart. ISR, the three letters stand for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And it is what gives you the indications and warning if somebody's going to do something against you. But we don't have a national level collection requirements, collection management system.
We're deficient on ISR?
I would say we are. I mean, when people look at weapons systems, I've yet to, now you're able to, for example, the new frigates, you'll be able to put certain ISR capabilities on those new ships that are going to come in. We've got aircraft that we use, for example, a P-8, that is an ISR platform. We do have Collins-class submarines. They're out there somewhere, that great ISR system. And when we get the Virginia class, they'll be able to provide us ISR. But I don't think we have a robust ISR capability as a nation. And I do not believe we have a national collection requirement system that integrates everybody's collection requirements so that we prioritize what I like to say are the crystal balls as opposed to the glass balls and the rubber balls. I don't think anybody in government could tell you right today what are the government's crystal balls when it comes to intelligence requirements that we're going against.
Is AUKUS a good deal for Australia, John?
It's a deal. I don't know if it's
not a good deal by the sounds of it.
No, I don't think it's a good deal. I'm not an AUKUS fan. I'm not confident we'll ever see those 3 Virginia-class submarines. Now, that's, again, my opinion. There's other folks out there that say, yeah, they'll be here. AUKUS, in regards to the build of the submarine, the AUKUS submarine in Great Britain, I don't have a lot of confidence in that either. And I'm talking as a taxpayer now, and knowing a little bit about how these acquisition programs work. I'm far more jazzed about the frigate purchase we just made than I am the AUKUS submarines.
You talk to people back in the US. Yeah. You're in the know with people who know.
Right.
What does that tell you about whether those 3 Virginia-class submarines are ever going to make it to Australia?
Well, the way it's written, and we've known this because we're going, even if Bridge Colby goes through and says, yeah, we'll keep the plan as it is. If the U.S. is short submarines, the Australia loses.
We're not getting them.
We're not going to get them. And as it is, we're getting 3 redone submarines. Well, it's better than no submarines, particularly when you look at the age of the Collins. My question is that, and what I've never heard explained, and maybe I've missed it, maybe it's out there, but how does Australia, how do these submarines fit into our strategy, our national defense strategy? Why are we getting these type of submarines, and how do they fit into the overall deterrence that we're trying to project? They are very good ISR platforms. And the fact that we're getting 8 of them means that, basically we're going to have maybe 2 out at any one time once we get them all here. Unlike the United States, who will, cozy up, whether it's Virginia class or Ohio class submarines, off somebody's coastline and threaten to fire the missiles that are on board at a foe because they're not playing nicely. I don't ever foresee Australia using our submarines to do that kind of aggressive sort of offensive capabilities. So my question is, what's the plan behind why Australia wants these submarines? And if it's for ISR purposes, great. But how are they going to integrate with other ISR capabilities?
How much of a problem for the United States is Chinese ownership of the port of Darwin?
I don't think it's that big of a deal. I know that there are, and the reason I say that is that there are, this same company owns and operates ports in the United States. So there you go. And, it's all in the open. Being an intelligence officer, when this all broke, I thought, Secretary Richardson did a fantastic job of putting people in their place, to include the United States. I mean, there was a bit of hand waving and stuff like that, but it sort of blew over right away because one, it's all in the open up there. I mean, it's a port. It's not like they're going to allow Chinese cruisers to come, floating into Darwin. If we have the ISR and we have the deterrence, and we do what Mr. Burgess said, we're following the ability of these adversaries, whether it's Chinese or anybody else, to interfere in Australian domestic politics or operations or defense, then it's an issue. But as a professional intelligence officer for many, many years, to me, I saw it when it happened as an opportunity to collect on the Chinese, to collect on that, see how they do business, to be able to cross pollinate.
So it might actually advantage.
Yeah. Well, and as an intelligence officer, I'm always looking at how to take advantage. And if you're going to come into my backyard and operate, it makes it much easier for me to be able to watch what you're doing and how you're doing it.
How valuable an ally are we to the United States?
The United States, and I used to be a war planner on the Joint Staff and at 18 War. We would put together plans. We would start with Australia. We had put together a coalition. We'd always figure out how can we get the Aussies into the fray. Because when it comes to just grit, of being a reliable soldier, when you're in the foxhole, you could not. Like, I'm going to look at where vulnerabilities are to the rest of the force. And right now, to no fault of the men and women who serve in our ADF, capability-wise, we're waning. So, yeah, we're a liability.
That's a big call.
Yeah, I mean, there are people that aren't going to like what I have to say, but it's the truth. And we can't wait 4 or 5 years. We have to wait. And it's not just the government. It's a collective thing that's happened over time. And it goes back to the fact that we always knew, not only Australia, you pick a NATO country, they always knew the U.S. would be there. But those times have changed. We're in a different world environment. And it goes back to what I was saying politically. If you don't like Trump, fine. He's going to be gone in 3.5 years. But Trump policies, ideas, doctrine, they're going to be around for a while.
A lot of people say, yes, but we give Pine Gap to the US. Pine Gap, the base in Central Australia, is really important to the US. What do you say?
It's more important to the Australians than it is the United States. I mean, we have similar bases or similar facilities, in England, Turkey, Germany, places like that. With technology nowadays, you can what we call bin pipe that stuff back to Fort Meade, Maryland, and it all can be collected there. There's some unique things. I'll give you granted, without going into a lot of details, that happened at Pine Gap. It's important, but if the Australians came in and said we don't want to have a bilateral relationship with the United States anymore at Pine Gap, I don't think the Americans would say, oh, it's gonna bugger up how we do business from an intelligence surveillance perspective. So
They wouldn't mind.
I'm just saying it would not be it would be a loss, but it wouldn't be a significant loss.
The other great one I hear is, oh yes, but America really needs the Indian Ocean base that Perth will provide it in years to come. Is Perth a jewel in that sense?
I believe Perth is very significant, particularly the expanded operations there as a base, a rotational base for U.S. submarines. The facilities that it's particularly as they do operations into the Indo-Pacific area.
John Powers sees one other factor at play in US-Australia relations now, and it's got nothing to do with the budgets, the bases and ports that consume so much of the discussion on defence. What's your view on Kevin Rudd and his role as ambassador for Australia in Washington?
Yeah, Mr. Rudd. He is a distractor. And this is me talking as an Aussie now, is that, and from my experience as a bureaucrat, as a civil servant for many, many years. Although he's a former prime minister, Mr. Rudd serves at the pleasure of the Australian people and of the prime minister. I believe Mr. Rudd has put Mr. Albanese in an untenable position where he's waiting for Mr. Albanese to have to ask Mr. Rudd to leave. Mr. Rudd should do the honorable thing and resign without having to be asked. Mr. Trump doesn't like him, and as a result of Mr. Trump not liking him, nobody else in his administration is going to give him the time of day. That is a disservice to us as Australians. It is, and as I say, it is. I would believe, as a former public servant myself, is that he shouldn't have to be asked. He should say what is good for the nation, and he should resign.
And if Kevin Rudd had not have been there and we had another ambassador in Washington, do you think Anthony Albanese would have met Donald Trump by now?
I do. I really do. I think, yeah. I do believe that somebody else that would be able to have those discussions, Mr. Trump's a very, he is a different cup of tea. There ain't no two ways about it. But he's a relationable person. I think, I'm not saying he had a great relationship, from my understanding, with Mr. Hockey when he was I've said this before. People think I'm absolutely crazy, but I think, he got along fairly well with Mr. Turnbull. They're both businessmen. And that's something Mr. Trump can relate to. My understanding is one of the reasons that Mr. Rudd was nominated to be the ambassador, and I could be proven wrong. You may know better than I do. It's because he's such a Chinese expert. There's a hell of a lot of Chinese experts in the United States. Being an ambassador is about relations. It's about representing your people. And yeah, I do believe there would have been a meeting by now. There'd at least have been phone calls answered, or even if you're blasting out of whatever the G7 or whatever meeting it was, there would have been a, hey, I can't see you right now. It's been very discouraging the way that Mr. Trump and I agree with everybody else. It's rather undiplomatic the way he has treated Mr. Albanese and treated the Aussies. Because I think deep down inside, most Americans, to include Mr. Trump, there's something about the Aussie larrikin that resonates with Americans. So there is always going to be a great relation. Now, the thing that, as an American who's now an Aussie, that most Americans can't get through their head is, we see ourselves more like Aussies, and we can't understand, why do you hang on to this thing with the king and queen? You're like us. We fought a revolution and, we threw out the shackles. Get over it. You're more like us. What are you doing? So I think there's a great respect of the people of America towards Australia. I know there's a great respect of the intelligence services and the military services towards the military and our fellow intelligence service here in Australia.
But Kevin Rudd is a problem to the relationship.
I believe so. Both I personally and professionally, I do believe he's a hindrance to the relationship and an open dialogue with this administration. And, the good news is Trump leaves in 3.5 years. If Mr. Rudd stays that whole time, he should be gone by then too, because I personally believe either J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio is going to be the next president of the United States. Can't say for certain. Don't know how things are going to play. But if it were one of those two, he's going to get less airtime, or somebody like a Mr. Rudd will get less airtime than he's getting right now. And so do the right thing is what I'm trying to say, in my opinion, for the country. And don't put our prime minister in a position to have to remove you. Because if he doesn't and you just stay there, we are going to languish for 3.5 years. Not good.
John Powers, thank you for tackling the issue.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it, buddy.
This has been The Issue from 7 News. You can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Join us next time for a new issue and a new guest to unravel it for us. Till then, all the best.
Today, Australia's
Privacy is essential.
No, you will. Why are you going to jail? That's not a problem. Come on. There you go.
She walks into the room not to belong, but to command. The air tightens when she speaks. Her tone, sharp with authority, yet hollow in empathy, cuts into the moment like a blade. Some call her entitled, others label her spoiled, but beneath the surface her psyche is far more complex and disturbing. This is not merely a cultural meme or internet caricature. The Karen is a psychological pattern wearing human skin. From the outside, she may seem like a middle-aged woman upset over trivial matters. A hair appointment delayed, a coffee order wrong, a store policy she believes doesn't apply to her. But these outbursts, these aggressive demands for compliance, are symptoms of something deeper, the pathology of control. To understand the Karen, you must look not at her actions, but at her belief system. At the core of her psychology lies a profound fragility of identity. The Karen archetype is not born, it is manufactured over time, shaped by cultural conditioning, social expectations, and an unchallenged internal narrative of superiority. She was taught, directly or indirectly, that the world should work for her. And when it doesn't, the disruption is perceived not as inconvenience, but as injustice. Entitlement then becomes her armor, not her power. What the world sees as rudeness is often her defense against an invisible fear, irrelevance. To a Karen, being ignored feels like erasure. Her voice must be heard, not for communication, but for affirmation of her perceived importance. She is often a product of environments where dominance was praised and submission was scorned, where having standards was applauded, even when it meant demeaning others, where being a strong woman meant being louder, colder, and quicker to assert than to understand. This kind of upbringing creates a mind that cannot tolerate ambiguity, only hierarchy. She must know who is above and who is below, and in her worldview she is rarely, if ever, below. You can see this hierarchy play out in everyday encounters. She doesn't complain to the server, she demands to see the manager. Not because she truly believes the issue is catastrophic, but because she believes someone lower on the food chain must be punished for disrupting her comfort. Her world is binary. There are those who serve and those who are served. The Karen believes she is the latter. But where does this internal belief originate? Often it begins with overvaluation in childhood. Not necessarily love, but conditional praise. She may have been raised in households where performance was rewarded over presence, where being daddy's little princess didn't mean being emotionally understood, but constantly being reminded that she was exceptional, without needing to be kind. In such an environment, she learned that identity is transactional, that value is not intrinsic but reinforced by status, appearances, and how well others obey her expectations. In adulthood, when the real world stops mirroring those childhood conditions, she begins to unravel. The barista doesn't care who she is. The clerk doesn't bend the rules for her. The neighbor doesn't apologize for existing loudly. Suddenly, the world becomes not just annoying, but threatening. Every moment that doesn't affect introspection, but escalation. Psychologists often identify these behaviors with narcissistic traits, though not always full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. Karens may possess what's known as vulnerable narcissism, a quieter but equally corrosive belief that their needs matter more, that they deserve more, and that any failure to recognize this is a form of disrespect. But here's the paradox. Underneath the narcissism lies insecurity. That's what makes it so dangerous. The louder she shouts, the more fragile she is. The more she demands power, the more powerless she feels internally. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. Insecurity breeds control, control breeds conflict, and conflict confirms her internal belief that the world is against her, thus justifying more control. It's not sadness that lives in her, it's resentment, and resentment is far more corrosive than grief. Grief mourns what was lost. Resentment blames the world for taking it. This is why the Karen doesn't adapt to change. She fights it. She fights new pronouns, new customs, new social norms, not because they harm her, but because they symbolize a world that is no longer designed with her at the center. She believes society is becoming too sensitive, too politically correct, too permissive. But what she's really saying is, I no longer control the narrative, and that terrifies me. She masks that fear with moral outrage. She invokes rules, policies, fairness, but only when they serve her. When those same rules protect others, she grows furious. To her, equality feels like oppression, because it removes the privileges she assumed were permanent. And that's the unspoken truth. She doesn't want fairness. She wants exceptionalism. There's also the element of performative anger. A Karen doesn't just get upset. She wants to be seen getting upset. Rage, for her, is a theater. She performs indignation the way others perform compassion. The raised voice, the accusatory finger. The phone camera pulled out not for safety, but for leverage. Her meltdowns are meant to humiliate, not resolve. But beneath all of this is a psychological need that is devastatingly human. The need to matter. She wants to matter in a world that has moved on. In a society where youth was built on a version of the world that no longer not with tears, but with rage. And what about race? Let's not ignore it. Many Karen incidents involve white women weaponizing their discomfort against people of color. This is not incidental, it is integral. The entitlement isn't just personal, it's structural. She's inherited consciously or unconsciously the belief that her discomfort is more valid than another's existence, that she can summon authority, a manager, the police, the HOA, and expect to be believed, protected, obeyed. This is not just psychological, it's historical. It's the legacy of power systems where her archetype was always the beneficiary. So when that system fails her, when people no longer flinch, when cameras turn on her instead of away, she is thrown into disarray. The power she wielded so effortlessly is now a mirror reflecting her own behavior back at her, unfiltered and permanent. And she doesn't like what she sees. To understand the Karen is not to sympathize with her. It is to deconstruct her. We must examine the mechanism behind her entitlement. What drives it, what sustains it, and what happens when it collapses. At its core, the Karen identity is a false self, a constructed persona designed to mask a deep sense of insufficiency. This is not a person rooted in truth, but in performance. The performance of being correct, of being above, of being the final voice in the room. It's not confidence, it's a desperate need to never feel wrong. And that's where the psychological danger lies. You see, when someone cannot tolerate being wrong, they also cannot tolerate growth. The ego becomes too brittle to hold contradiction, too defensive to absorb truth. And so the Karen begins to rot from within, not from malice, but from stagnation. She cannot update her software. She runs on belief systems that are expired, ideas about gender, class, race, authority, and worth that no longer apply. But instead of evolving, she doubles down. The past becomes her religion. Back when people had manners, back when kids respected elders, back when the world made sense. What she's really saying is, back when I felt powerful. Her rigidity is a rebellion against relevance. In a world moving toward complexity, she seeks simplicity, rules, roles, obedience. The Karen doesn't want mutual understanding. She wants to win, to dominate the interaction, to flatten nuance under the weight of her certainty. This is why arguments with Karens are never about resolution. They're about submission. She doesn't just want you to agree, she wants you to yield, to accept that her truth is universal, that her standards are moral, that her dissatisfaction justifies your silence. She's not just angry, she's moralizing her anger. To her, manners are not about respect, they're about hierarchy. And when you don't conform to her vision of civilized behavior, it offends her not because it's wrong, but because it disempowers her. Your refusal to be controlled is an existential threat. This explains why many Karen outbursts occur in public spaces, restaurants, lobbies, parking lots. These are shared environments, places that don't belong to her. And that's precisely the problem. When a space cannot be possessed, she tries to police it. It's not about the rules, it's about whose rules get enforced. Let's go deeper. Many Karens also display what psychologists call external locus of control. The belief that their problems are caused by external forces, never internal patterns. When something goes wrong, it's always someone else's fault. The delivery was late, the policy was stupid, the teenager was rude, the customer service agent was incompetent. Never, I overreacted. Never, I was disrespectful. Never, I need to reflect. Because reflection would mean acknowledging that she's not always right. And for someone whose identity is glued together by self-righteousness, that is not an option. So she rewrites the story. In her mind, she becomes the victim, the martyr of modern society. You can't say anything anymore. People are too sensitive. I'm just speaking the truth. But what she calls truth is often just entitlement with better branding. And this victimhood isn't harmless. It's weaponized. She uses it to justify cruelty, to mask prejudice, to avoid accountability. The Karen does not feel guilty when she lashes out. She feels justified. Her logic is circular. I feel disrespected, therefore you are disrespectful. And because you are disrespectful, I am allowed to punish you. It's not reason. It's retaliation masquerading as reason. There's another layer to consider. Many Karens are women who were promised empowerment, but were handed performance. Society told them to be confident, but only if it fit a mold. To be independent, but not too disagreeable. to speak up, but only when it made others comfortable. So they carved out power, so they policed behavior. They couldn't own institutions, so they dominated interactions. This is why many Karens act like self-appointed referees of public morality. They monitor dress codes, tone of voice, social cues, perceived disrespect, not because they're virtuous, but because being the judge makes them feel safe. And what happens when that power no longer works? They panic. When someone stands up to a Karen, calmly, firmly, without fear, it often results in escalation. Not because the confrontation is aggressive, and nothing threatens the Karen more than realizing her authority is imaginary. She may cry, she may call the police, she may accuse others of abuse. This is not just manipulation, it's psychological collapse. The illusion of power is breaking, and with it, her entire constructed self. In some cases, Karens are not only enraged, they are humiliated, and this humiliation turns into vengeance. Them, but against the individual who exposed what makes the Karen archetype so dangerous. It's not just about rudeness, it's about fragile power in decline, and fragile power doesn't fade quietly. It thrashes, it accuses, it destroys. Where dominance equals value, where authority is earned not through compassion or competence, but through fear. They are the last gasps of a system that told certain people they would always be at the top, and are now watching that promise dissolve. And like any fading empire, they don't go gently. They go loudly. You see, the Karen is not new. She is just visible now. The phone camera is her reckoning. The internet is her mirror. She can no longer bully in private. The whole world watches and judges. And unlike the past where shame could be buried, today it is archived. But will she change? Probably not, because change requires surrender, and surrender requires humility. Two things the Karen mind is not trained to access. To dismantle her psychology would mean questioning every belief she has built her self-worth on. It would mean asking, what if I am not better? What if I am not owed? What if I am just human? And for the Karen, humanity is not enough. So she clings to the myth, she yells louder, demands more, doubles down. But inside, the fear remains. If I am not exceptional, then who am I? And perhaps that is the most terrifying question of all, because it means that the Karen, for all her noise, her tantrums, her entitlement, is not confronting the world. She is running from herself.
How are you? Good morning. Thank you.
We're just trying to get as close as we can to Bondi, mate.
Yeah.
Please.
Sure.
Oh, Yeah, I was thinking the time, Georgia. Just want to pull that read, might go in his car or something, then we'll jump out, mate. Yeah. Thanks for that. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Have a good day.
Men, what do they want? Money, status, fast, expensive cars? What is the ultimate male fantasy? Is it fame, fortune, 3 hot chicks at once? Hell yeah, brother. No, according to men on the internet, it's something a little more simple. This is literally just a fetish. I fucking hate men so much. Men are why we can't have nice things. As I was working on an upcoming video, I made the terrible mistake of logging onto Twitter, where I saw this post. A montage from the anime Josie, the Tiger, and the Fish, a movie about a college student who's assigned to take care of a paraplegic girl, and spoiler, eventually they fall in love. Many men were urine posting in the replies of this tweet and talking about how they wish to fall in love and would love a relationship like this, while many others, mostly women, were absolutely fucking disgusted at this. Why would a bunch of men be fantasizing about being with a woman in a wheelchair? Seems pretty creepy and predatory, right? Also just unrealistic and problematic. Well, in this video, we are going to be talking about why so many men resonated to that clip and this movie, and why so many people are so confused as to why. We are also going to be reading some absolutely unhinged tweets, as usual, to get to the bottom of why such a wholesome post turned into, once again, another battlefront for the ongoing, never-ending gender war. Men versus women, women versus men, the male loneliness epidemic, the female loneliness epidemic, the dealing with dating apps. Do men prefer thin women or curvy women? Brunettes or blondes? Do women like dad bods or fit men? Do they like beards or clean shaven? Oh yeah, that reminds me. Let's quickly get into today's sponsor, Henson Shaving. You ever just accept that some products are just garbage? Like for years I thought ripping your tights on the first wear was just a part of being a human woman. We just accepted that. It's a bad design. And that's why I like Henson Shaving. Because if you've ever skins help. What really sets Henson apart is their engineering. With their Henson AL13 safety ratings being manufactured in an aerospace machine shop that built parts for the International Space Station. This precision allows the blade to extend thousands of inches beyond the shave blade, less than the thickness of a human hair, resulting in an irritation-free shave every time. And here's the best part. Once you invest in a Henson razor, it's a lifetime purchase. The only thing you'll need to replace are the blades, which literally cost only 10 cents each. So once you own the razor, you'll be spending like $3 to $5 on blades, compared to the ongoing cost of buying expensive plastic cartridges. Henson store offers a variety of colors and even a titanium version, so you can pick the razor that best fits your style. So if you're tired of razor burn and overpaying for blades, it was the perfect time to make the switch. Just head over to hensonshaving.com/shoe and add both a Henson razor and the 100 blades to your car, and then enter code SHOE at checkout to get the 100 blades for free with your purchase. Your skin, your wallet, and your environment will thank you. Big thanks to Henson Razor for sponsoring this video, and thank you, the viewer, for not skipping the ad. You didn't skip the ad, right? Now let's get back to the video. Now, I am not an anime connoisseur. In fact, I basically know nothing about anime. I am probably the most tourist of all the tourists. Yeah, hi. I have a question. Was the upskirt shot necessary in order to advance the plot? I watched and Sailor Moon when I was a kid, and a few years ago, boy, not furry, by the way. And honestly, that's about it for my anime consumption. Unless you're counting VTubers. If you're counting VTubers, I watch a lot of anime. But because of this clip going viral, I watched Josie the Tiger and the Fish, and, well, thought it was a good movie. I recommend watching it. I thought it was a really cute, good story. I only cried a little bit, and I completely understood what the tweet meant by calling it the average male fantasy. So, what was wrong with it? Why did this clip go so viral in such a negative way? Why were thousands of people angry at this post? Well, let us dilly-dally no longer and read some of these angry replies to get a better understanding of what the issue is, shall we? Wholesome male fantasy, and it's fetishizing a disabled girl for him to control. Oh no. They think, oh God, why? Always vulnerable, always happy, always needs you. Pretty perverted. Where are these fan fictions coming from? There are like hundreds of tweets just like this. Why did they see a cute montage of a happy couple, a man and a woman happy, together? I know, unheard of. Why did they see that and then immediately come to these conclusions? Like, as someone who actually watched the movie, Josie is not always happy, and she's absolutely not portrayed as some, like, vulnerable, sex doll waifu. She's boisterous. She kind of has a foul mouth. She's very sassy and headstrong. She like straight up calls him her servant. She was also very depressed. She basically never left her house. She was basically a girl. I love to see representation in media. But they actually show her disability, like, not in a good way. Like, they don't romanticize it. They don't sugarcoat it. And I noticed, unlike a lot of movies, unlike a lot of romance movies, at least like the Hallmark kind, where it's like the stuffy male lead learning to live life from the quirky, cute female lead, he's already gotten his shit together. And she learns to live life from him. He encourages her to live her dreams. And in return, he learns to live life in a completely different way. And I thought that was really cool and sweet. Also, the animation was really good. Is anime good? Have I been sleeping on anime this entire time? His fantasy is that she becomes permanently disabled and helplessly dependent on him, but can still make him a sandwich. Sounds about right. Oh my God. After watching the movie, these tweets are even more insane. But even putting the movie aside, just seeing that like cute montage out of context, where the fuck are they getting this? These are very clearly just two happy people. But because the caption was the average male fantasy, their mind immediately goes to the darkest, worst faith interpretation of this. The problem is these people can't see any humanity in men. They can't see any humanity in general. Average male fantasy equals girlfriend with no agency who's completely physically dependent on you and forced into blanket subservience and compliance. Sounds about right. You males are weird for fetishizing physically disabled women. Average male fantasy is having a physically disabled girl that they can abuse however they want. Got it. Not to be that guy, I'm gonna be that guy. The infantilization of the physically disabled here is a little, dare I say, ableist. The implication here that people in wheelchairs cannot find love, and if they do, the person who loves them literally just loves them because they can't run away. Weird. Average men can't even be nice to their healthy and normal girlfriend. What makes you think they'll be able to handle a disabled person as their lover? Normal? What do you mean by normal? These people are just so ableist, chat. Can you believe it? Chat? I don't even like this chat. I'm disabled, blind. So I showed this to my boyfriend. He says, I love you because you're you, and you make my days happier. So what if I have to drive you places or help you with cooking and cleaning? I would have done that anyway. Disability has nothing to do with it. I love you. Man, I don't know if I tell you this, but your boyfriend is racist. Sorry you had to find out this way. You show this as fantasy because it's not true for the majority of men who participate in abuse of disabled people. No, the fantasy is the woman appreciates his efforts to make her happy. Stop lying and abusing women and the disabled. Your meds, schizo. You don't even know that guy. What do you mean stop abusing women and the disabled? Who are you? Also, the majority of men participate in abuse of disabled people. Are you okay? The majority of that is a very, very small minority of men. The majority of men are men that just wake up, take a shit, get out of bed, take a shower, go to work, come home, and wait for GTA 6 to come out.
That's the majority of men. Men commit 95% of all rape, but okay. Barging into the romance section of Barnes & Noble like, attention everyone! Where is that coming from? So close, this is fetish content. Ah yes, the dirtiest, most taboo of all fetishes. A happy relationship. Honestly, in 2025, that might be true. Oh, you want a wife and kids? You sick fuck. But this is literally just a perverted fantasy, LMAO. You think it's a perverted fantasy because, how do I put this in clean? You are literally seeing a cute montage of a male and female character having fun together, being in love together, being like, right, he's a rapist. This is a fetish. Are these people okay? Stop looking for it. Wait, this is a woman. Okay, stop reading Taken by the Werewolf Billionaire. Or whatever the fuck you read. I swear to God, some of the shit women read would make the most depraved internet gooner blush. Or so I've been told. This is literally just a fetish. Okay, listen, I'm not gonna pretend there's nobody out there who's like, she can't run away, she has no legs. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend there's nobody out there who has a crippled, disabled fetish, okay? I've been on the internet for 20 years. I've been on DeviantArt. I've seen shit you wouldn't believe. But the majority of people, probably most, if not all the people responding to this, do not have a fetish, okay? In fact, her being in a wheelchair basically has nothing to do with it. Much like how females coon over, like, vampires or, like I said before, the billionaire werewolf fantasy. This is just the average male fantasy distilled down to its most extreme. So what is the average male fantasy? The average male fantasy is the fantasy of both men and women alike. It is simply to love and to be loved. But more specifically, the male fantasy is to be a protector and a provider for those that they love. Put a pin in this because we are going to come back to this in a big way. Trust me. The average male fantasy is being a globally known terrorist. The average male fantasy is that a woman who isn't fat. The average male fantasy is actually job security. You know what? These guys may have a point here. Pedophile alert. Men want disabled child wives. Average male fantasy is a disabled child. More proof that men are pedos. That's a little girl. This is weird. So first of all, she's literally older than the guy. The guy is 22 and she is 24. In anime years, he is practically hag maxing. And yes, he may be physically disabled. But are all men mentally disabled in their own special way? At least the ones in my audience. They will freely admit this. Maybe she, the older woman, is taking advantage of this sensitive young man. Have you ever thought of that? She looks like an 11-year-old child. Where are her breasts? First of all, really weird way to say that. She looks like a child. Show me her titties. Also, I love how, like, when anime women have huge boobs, it's disgusting, Homer brain or whatever. But if the anime woman has small boobs, she's a child and you're a timer. Can't fucking win. Also, if she had big boobs, they'd absolutely be like, wow, look at this sexualization of the disabled. Also, you know, like, adult women can be flat-chested, right? Like, that actually exists in real life. Like, adult human women can have small boobs. We love all titties here on the Shoe on Head channel. All titties is good titties. End of story. Women fantasy. A boyfriend with depth and a loving, soft, deeply caring side of them. Men's fantasy. 12-year-old anime girl who looks and speaks like a toddler. Also notice how she's literally the shape and size of a child. Yuck. Have you people ever seen a child? No. You're all childless. Silly me. She's not even that short. She's just sitting. See, like when they're laying side by side, she's like a full-grown adult woman. Why do these people look at this and immediately think of child rape? Go to therapy. And listen, I know with anime can get a little weird, right? Like, excuse me, Poo-Poo Pee-Pee-chan is 2,000 years old, and this is Poo-Poo Pee-Pee-chan. But this does not even look like a child. This looks like a cute woman. This is like a random grandpa. I feel like there are no cute women nowadays. You know what I mean? You have like the Insta baddies, the ethos, the e-girls, the muscle mommies, the boss babes, the boy babes. But I feel like every woman is just hot now. Which, by the way, I don't think is healthy for the male psyche whatsoever. You shouldn't wake up and be able to scroll through pictures of, like, the hottest woman you've ever seen in your life, like, 20 times before you've had, like, your morning cup of coffee. You shouldn't log in and immediately be one-shotted by 10 10s all day, as if that wouldn't make you go insane, as if that wouldn't make you crash out. Like back in the day, you'd probably see like one fine dame on your bus ride to work, and you'd think about her for 40 years until the day you die. That's how it used to. That's how it should be. Now every woman is like a crazy, hot, unobtainable Instagram goddess with the fattest of ass. Zoomers don't know how good we had it. You go to Blockbuster, and the 21-year-old cashier behind the counter would be the most adorable woman you've ever seen. No Botox, no lip filler, just pure soul, full of joy and whimsy. And now women are full of hate and SSRIs, but they're hot. They're hotter than they've ever been. They're hotter and more depressed than they've ever been in history. Sad. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, anime. I didn't take my Vyvanse today, could you tell? Men's fantasy. A big titty woman with the face of a 16-year-old that is useful for cooking, cleaning, and sex. Women's fantasy. Gets treated like a queen and a man who keeps tracks of our periods so he can take care of us. I think I speak for a lot of women here when I say our fantasies do not, in fact, include men tracking our periods. Personally, if my husband was like, honey, just a reminder, you're in your luteal phase, I'm taking the kids. Men like to pretend they want this, and then they beat their wife when dinner isn't ready or their son when he's misbehaving. First of all, I'm sorry that happened to you, but there are in fact good men out there. I've seen them. Some may be in this very audience. Sorry, I couldn't keep the head audience. You're all gremlins. Male fantasy equals a woman that can't run away from him. A woman that's dependent on him. Interesting. When men are involved, it's basic survival instinct to assume the worst. Men are guilty until they prove themselves innocent. You know what? I take my opinions back on free speech. I changed my mind. No more free speech. No more free speech until you bitches learn to behave. A woman's fantasy is a man who won't rip her, and a man's fantasy is ripping a woman. I'm sorry, where is the rip man? Maybe that's how you see it, because you're brainwashed to hate men. So true. I hate how, but in reality, women are the real demons here. Oh, god damn it. We just want a happy relationship. Is it so much to ask for? Yes. Yes, it is. Oh, look, more misogynistic gooner fantasy slop written by misogynistic gooner men. This is why 70% of anime is garbage. So, here's the thing, that misogynistic gooner fantasy slop written by misogynistic gooner men was actually written by Saiko Tanabe, a woman. A woman wrote this story. And I feel like a very important detail everyone is sleeping on when they covered this was the fact that this is very much the female fantasy as well. A man loving you for who you are despite your flaws, literally sweeping you off your feet and carrying you around on adventures, helping you live out your dreams, face your fears, and supporting you through the good and bad times. You're going to sit here and tell me that's not the female fantasy too? Is this not the basic female fantasy? Is this not the knight in shining armor coming to rescue you and falling in love with you? Why are there so many women so mad at this? Are men now the hopeless romantics? Are men now the ones yearning for a fairy tale romance? Is this why all the Disney remakes are like, she's not going to be saved by the prince, she's a strong, independent woman? Meanwhile, men still want to be the prince, men still want to be the knight in shining armor. Men are like, I will save you from your monotonous 9-to-5 job. I will give you a house and babies. And women are like, no, I must be an actuarial consultant. Be gone, vile misogynist. Is that what is occurring here? Also, that aside, there literally is a gender swapped version of this story called A Perfect World. It is a manga. Manga? Oh, do not come for me, weebs. Men will statistically leave their wives and partners the moment they find out they're disabled from a life-threatening condition. You're right, it is a fantasy. Actually, that study was debunked by the authors themselves, who admitted they did the math wrong. It's actually not much higher, but then again, even if it was, and it happens, I've seen it happen to people, it's terrible. Marriage should be through sickness and through health, but that's not really the point here. And the fact that so many people are focusing on the wheelchair part of this just proves that they just don't get it. The ones in pure mind and pure soul get it, but these they don't get it. But not all is beyond me. They call them creeps from wanting actual love and not a girl boss who only wants your money. Oh, thank you, insane person. Hopefully their lives aren't full of people calling her a pick-me alert, least obvious pick-me. Me, pick me, please. Or we picks you, sis. Pick me. An incel could have written this. Fuck. Why are so many VTubers either pygmies or racist? Maybe why do so many female VTubers disagree with you? Why so many aren't towing the mainstream liberal feminist and PC line? Because they can. See, the most powerful weapon women have against other women is social ostracization. You want to be seen as a puny or racist, so you keep your mouth shut in order to survive in female social circles. But in the case of VTubers, virtual YouTubers, they're basically they can say anything they want. They're basically doing this. They're free from the chains of the eternal nature of all else. But apparently, being online does not save them. They still get doxxed for simply not hating men who love you. Maybe I should save this rant for a different Men are why we can do nice things, by the way. First of all, men make all the things. Also, I just realized it was a man saying that. It was a full-ass man saying men are why we can't have nice things. I deserve this trophy. This is for you, sir. This is for you. I'm not only. Listen, I make women jokes. I'm very critical of feminism and propaganda aimed at women. But you will never catch me in a million years saying something like women are why we can't have nice things. I've been wrong. No family members. I have enough friends. They don't have a choice. Women make the world a beautiful place. Like men can be flawed and deserve criticism, like anyone else. But they're really genuinely so talked about people put down their own gender or race. Oh God, race. Self-hating white people. Don't get me started on self-hating white people. White people are so evil. I hate being white. White people can't do this. White people do this so gross. You're not getting into a condom, bro. You're not getting invited to the cookout. Enough. But yeah, women were not the only ones who had a problem with it. There were a lot of men who quite relate to this being the average male fantasy. It's fine to love the disabled. I didn't need to remind you that. To glorify it, this anime is certainly Marxist propaganda. The movie is about him taking a job as a caretaker, and when he learns of her dreams, he makes it his mission to help dreams come true. So, is Marxist propaganda to help a disabled person pursue their dreams? Yeah, it's morbid. Empathy is the target of propaganda. Marxism is the girl in wheelchair. I love this. Empathy is the target of propaganda. Every piece of media that makes you feel empathy is communism. Political brain rots. If you're at the point where you see this and you're thinking of communism, you need to unlock. You are unwell. I'm sorry, but when I reproduce, I don't want a high probability of my offspring being mentally or physically retarded. We need a better class of incels whose bar is higher than the red market. She's not pretty, and she has a smile in her face. Not genetic. Also, what is this more? I love how everyone is just having like a normal conversation about this, right? And this guy just comes out of nowhere like, I would never put my pure white seed into your vile culture. Like, you absolutely know this guy is not white girlfriend. They also always like white people women always have white boyfriends. Always, I hate non-white people always have non-white girlfriends. I don't know what it is, but I've seen it too many times. I guarantee you it's in the Mark's black sun Roman statue Twitter account. He's clapping Latina booty cheeks. My fantasy is not being a simp, but okay. Balance isn't simping to a this is not the male fantasy. That man is a female. If she wasn't in a wheelchair, she'd be waiting for Chad. Fellas, isn't beta to love women? This is not my fantasy. This is engaged, to be honest. Fellas, isn't gay to love a woman what nobody does to a woman? Brother, I've seen what he does to a woman. It's far worse. The average male fantasy is taking care of their crippled wife. I don't think I've ever had that fantasy before. I thought it was going to be about going on some quest to kill the dragon to win the princess or something. It is. That is the average male fantasy. But there are no dragons to slay. There are no princesses to save. But there is that little lady in the grocery store who can't quite reach that top shelf. There's that heavy box the pretty girl you work with can't quite lift herself. There's that jar of tomato sauce your wife can't quite open. There's that Lego set your little son can't quite put together himself. Or there is this paraplegic girl who wants to see the ocean. This is the Princess and the Dragon story. And despite what many are told, men do have a lot of love to give. And they want some kind of excuse or mechanism to show that love. in a world where men expressing themselves is either seen as toxic or gay. And one way of expressing that love is solving problems. Men fucking love solving problems. I don't know what it is. They also love reading Wikipedia articles. The amount of times I walked over and my husband was reading a random fucking Wikipedia article about like the world's tallest buildings or like a random battle in World War II. I didn't know if this was autism or what, but apparently it's a man thing. Anyway, yes, men love solving problems. And in a world that makes them feel useless, makes them feel like they have no purpose, men desperately feel like they need to prove their worth. They are desperately looking for a purpose in life. So it is not all shocking to me that the modern young man is seeing a clip like this and longing for this. A lot of modern men don't have a chance to prove themselves, to make something of their lives. They don't have a chance to provide anything for anyone because they don't have anything to provide and they don't have anyone. They are doing everything their grandfathers did, but seeing no results. They're lost. What can they provide? And as I said earlier, being in a wheelchair is the protector and provider instinct taken to a extreme. And yes, it is a fantasy considering if you ask anyone who's actually in a wheelchair, they know it's not all butterflies and rainbows, and they know that it's hard on relationships. It can be difficult on their partner. But just like in the movie, it's not shown as butterflies and rainbows. Josie feels like a burden. But towards the end of the movie, the guy takes on that burden. Not because he gets something in return, but because it's his duty, because it makes her happy, which makes him happy in return. Loyalty, duty, virtue, acts of service, big or small, men live for that shit. And yes, these are stereotypes, not everyone fits these boxes, blah, 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 blah. But for the most part, it's true. When many men look at this relationship, that is what they see. And a lot of modern women are looking at this relationship and being disgusted because, in a way, it's the complete inverse of being strong independent women. They've been sold. They've been told they need to be. The modern woman crafted by modern Disney for modern audiences. Unlike the Hollywood crafted modern woman, this woman does need her man. She is not strong and she's not independent physically. This doesn't mean she's like an empty vessel with no thoughts. After the movie, Josie does it. It is a fantasy not because of a power imbalance, but because the man has a tangible.
Can depend on you. I know that if I ever feel frightened, I can just reach out to you.
Men simply want something good to die for, to make it beautiful to live. This manifests in a lot of ways, but the most common is having a loving partner and or a family. Something unobtainable to many people nowadays. So yes, literally one of the most normal things ever is becoming a fantasy. Sad. Also, men will deny this, but they absolutely have a biological clock. It may not be in your teens or your 20s, but one day you're going to have a dream, a little daughter making pancakes with your wife in the morning, and you're not going to be able to get it out of your head. And that is the male biological clock. Everything you do, the money you make working that grading 9-to-5 job, it will all be for something bigger and more important than yourself for a day. You will come home to a warm and happy home, greeted by people who care about you and love you, rely on you, and everything will make sense then. Until then, you'll just be on the internet, equal to misogynist, for wanting something bigger and more important than yourself, for wanting something beautiful and that is the average male fantasy. That is at once. Hell yeah, brother, video. And in the comments, let me know. Am I correct? Is that the average male fantasy? Or is it not that deep? Men and women in the comments, what is your fantasy? And no, I don't mean that. I don't want to hear about how you want to be crushed by a 12-foot creature. That is between you and God, not you and Shimon. I mean, what is your ultimate dream? Do you want to travel the world? Do you want to make a family one day? Do you want to own a phone? Do you want to live in shit in the woods and make pipe bombs? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you soon with a new video.
Departures or arrival? You going to departure? Arrivals, yeah. Here we are. Thank you. Have a good day.
And I just know that when I say that, half of you are going to be confused. You've never heard of it before. I will explain everything I've learned about this theory, show you some examples, and then give you my 2 cents on this whole thing. So to take you on the journey that I went down to get here, I'll show you the video that I first saw that introduced me to this whole thing. So I'm 24 years old, and I've been trying my hand at dating men specifically for probably about 5-6 years now in a serious way. I'm single at the moment. My boyfriend and I just broke up recently, and I have probably dated about like 4 to 5 men, seriously. Keep running into the same issues every single time I date a man, and I've been trying to like really get to the root of what it is. And now I know what you're thinking, you probably have a type. I do not have a type. These men don't know each other, they're not friends, they're not from the same area, they don't look alike. I really do not have a type. The only thing that these men have in common is that they are men. Really have been reflecting a lot and trying to figure out what like the root of all these issues is. Well, don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect, but I'm not the reason that any of these relationships ended. One of the main issues that I've come to recognize is that I don't think men are really socialized to know what it means to truly love someone, like love their partner and care for their partner. Obviously, I'm not saying this is all men, but I think it